got it, okay. All right. So, welcome to the Norfolk Planning Board meeting on September 10th, 2019. Please be advised that the meeting is being televised and recorded and both video and audio for home consumption. The first order of business is 32 Frederickson Road Estate Lot Special Permit, and as before, I will recuse myself from this transaction, and the Vice Chair will take over.
Do we have any maps, plans on this, Rich?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The plan for
Plan?
Frederickson.
The applicant here for Frederickson?
Yes.
Who is here for 32 Frederickson? Daniel, how are you? Could you just give us a recap of what you're asking for? A little bit of the history for the members that weren't here before. Just take the microphone there. Yep.
Purchase 32.
It's not for here, you won't hear it here.
Okay.
It's for the, it's for the cable, so.
Approximately 2 years ago, I purchased this lot. It was advertised to me as an estate lot, and I believe the permit was current at that time. Since then, you know, I've made some investment into this property to get to a building permit, conservation approval, septic engineering, driveway was put in, we've got a well in, and so really, next step is just to file the plan and house plan and go for a building permit. But in the process, because of this estate lot was still in the name of the previous owner, I wasn't aware when it expired, and so upon trying to renew the permit, I was informed that we'd have to just reapply. And so nothing has changed as far as the lot, the engineering, the design. So I really just missed the date on the renewal, and hoping we can make it an estate lot again, because I can't get a building permit without it.
Is this the same plan, Rich, that was approved from before? No changes?
It is.
You still have the comments from the engineer saying it complies with everything that we need for a state lot plan?
We do.
So it meets everything?
It does.
All right.
The only thing in this case was, like you mentioned, the lapse of time.
Did we,
So we
get to the position to, did he pay an extra fee to redo this?
he did.
How much was the fee?
$750 after the special permit, correct?
I think I may bring up and see if we may have a feeling to waive the fee with this man. It's just been a timing thing and all this extra time he spent, but that'll be after the fact. So I was here for the first approval. Most of you folks weren't, right? So why don't you shoot your questions out to Nathaniel on this particular plan, if you have any.
I don't. Because I think you actually covered the questions. It originally conformed, it hasn't changed, it's still in conformance, and it was really a lapse just because of the name change on the property.
Yeah, actually, as we went back through the continuances, this was originally approved in 2012, I think was the original date. From the previous owner, there was a lapse in the timing. So actually, when he bought it, technically it was already a lapse in the renewal period. So the bylaw, the way it's stated, you can, without a hearing, renew the permit, and they didn't get that done. So he actually bought something technically that was already lapsed as we went back. But
Is this a case like, for a project like this, Beta would have inspected it or not?
No,
This is
not
just a
for-
house,
yeah, it's
single
really,
family or whatever?
yeah, it's really
Okay,
a large house lot.
okay.
Nothing has changed.
And nothing's changed in the bylaws either.
Nothing has changed in the bylaw.
Neither one, right.
And I know on other estate lots, we had concerns around fire department access and water location and things of that nature. However, If there was a previous agreement in place that says, here's what the requirements are and you're conforming, that's why I really don't have any questions.
Yeah,
Because we're saying it's the same?
it's the same, yes, it is.
Same everything.
Yeah, okay. I am fine.
Chad, any questions? Aaron?
Don't think so.
All right, hearing none, I accept the motion to close the public hearing for Frederickson Road.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. All right, as far as the extra fee that the gentleman paid, $750. A lot of times in the past, when we've had redundancy here, that was really no fault of anybody's, actually. We've brought up the point of maybe waiving that fee, because it really isn't much of a cost, if any, to the town. There's been no other reviews, so you folks interested in
The only cost that would be to the town was the legal ad,
legal ad?
$250.
So maybe if we waive the fee, we can do it with a net of the cost of the publication of the public hearing?
But the fee's paid, and there's a use for the fee, so why would we waive the fee?
Is the difference between the two, 250 versus 750?
$750, yeah.
So you're saying return the difference between the
That's
two?
what we've done
Yes.
previously when people have refiled for no really extra work except for a timing thing. It's up to you.
I'd like to make a motion to return the difference between the two fees that were incurred by the property owner. I guess the value would be $500 that we would be returning to him.
So we can have a second. So Peter, you can't vote, correct?
Not on the fee, no.
Can you, is he able to vote for Frederickson? Has he been, has he?
Yeah, he is voting on Frederickson.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah,
You can.
Chad
only-
can.
Only
Correct.
Chad.
right.
Okay. Second, okay. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Is it unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. So we will return the net fee to you after we take out for the publication, okay? Now that that is out of the way, you have the permit in front of you. Was this emailed to everybody? It was, right?
Yes.
All right. Anybody have any questions on the actual decision? No? Did someone make a motion to approve the special permit application decision number 2019-08 for 32 Frederickson Road?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Nathaniel, you're all set. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Daniel, I'll get that stamped in to the town clerk tomorrow and email you a copy.
Okay, next item of business is 6 Hill Street. We have received a request for continuance to October 8th, and I would note also that we received a petition from the neighbors, which I think has been distributed to everybody.
Yes.
And so if you haven't had a chance to read it, please do. That will be discussed, among other things, at the next meeting. So we need a motion to continue until October 8th.
So
What
moved.
ti- what time is open, Bets?
7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock, okay. And do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, okay, it is a unanimous vote. We will, well, it's 7:20, and Bristol Pond, I was expecting that Attorney Maitland would be here.
Just an update.
She is, she's coming at the 7:40 time, so we can go.
7:40.
Okay.
Yeah,
Says
so we can
7:20.
jump down to other business.
But you told her 7, I had it on for 7:20, sorry.
Oh, really? Oh, geez.
That's all right.
Oh.
So she's coming at 7:40?
Yeah. Did you know?
Left hand and right hand, okay, all right.
40, really? Did you not?
Well, I left her with the other, all right.
We can work around it, it's all right.
I told a
Um,
bunch of people 7:40, so. So we have old new business, we can,
Yeah, we ought to work our way through that and come back to these appointments.
yes.
Okay, 14 Sharon Ave, request for as-built acceptance and request for final occupancy.
I can put that up. I have hard copies too, so. If you do wanna distribute that to them.
Now, again, on this final occupancy thing, we can recommend
To Bob?
to Bob, right?
Yeah.
Fill that plan, Rich?
July 19th, the police station knows that. Okay. Don't know
The numbers.
the numbers.
Are they on temporary occupancy now, the police station?
They have it on.
Yeah,
Yeah, temporary.
I'm not sure I have that as-built plan
All right.
electronic.
Oh, they're trying to?
We might have to
See,
make do with
opportunity
paper
for a
copies.
crime wave.
We can take a look.
Do this.
All right. This is the as-built.
Yes. Remember, I think it was back in March?
27th of March, yeah.
Yeah, it was a temporary.
Did we have a consulting engineer on this?
I didn't see any consultant engineer in the files on this.
I didn't think so.
No,
Familiar.
I don't think so either.
no.
What happened with the solar stuff on this? Did
The
they-
what?
Solar panels and stuff, I thought, did they back out of some of it, or at least a portion of it, or all of it?
I think there was some questions on the company that was offering the deal.
So there's none at this point?
No.
Not at this point, no.
At this
Okay.
point, no.
Yeah, they were gonna build these vertical
Canopy
columns
over
and
the-
canopy and put them,
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
Okay.
Right.
Might still happen, though?
It might still
After-
happen.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I think,
Well,
at minimum, I think on the roof, for sure. Well,
But if
believe
do-
it still will
If
happen,
it does,
but-
they ought to come back to us and describe what's going on.
I think they'll have to.
Yeah,
on the
So-
roof and on the ground?
yeah,
Both?
yeah. Yeah, we wanna see what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it. So,
Well, there's no, on the plans that are approved and as-built, there is no solar on them, right?
No, there's
So
no
that would be
solar
a-
on there.
That would be a
Yeah.
minor change,
Yeah.
or major, but depending on how you look at
Depends how
it.
you look
yeah,
at it,
but
yeah.
we'd like to see it, that's all.
Yeah.
This building has been under temporary occupancy since the end of March, right? April, May, June, July, August, 5 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took a little bit of time to, what's the date on that? July 9th?
July?
Yeah. Took some time to get the as-built plan, the final as-built plan.
Yeah.
I could tell the applicant in the future they need to work a little more diligently.
Did you review this as-built, Rich? Did you
I
look
have
at it?
not, no, I haven't compared it against the approved plan.
who holds responsibility for everything on this in the town? Is that you? Are you?
No.
No?
Not this is a facility, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a building committee who probably has responsibility for the finished,
Okay.
Well, if somebody's requesting acceptance, why isn't somebody here presenting
that's
the
a good
differences
question.
between what they're delivering and what was approved?
Good question.
Very good question. Well, there shouldn't be any differences. The last differences should be when they came to us for those minor modifications. Remember when Matt was here for those minor, changing the wall and a few other things? So, from the issuance of those minor modifications, there should be no more changes. This plan should be should be,
So, is anybody in this room willing to say that this plan is the same as what was approved?
It says right here, departure from the approved site plan, listed on plan dated February 8th, 2019. So these are the departures. And then it says items completed since February 8th, and that's what's been completed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, reading through this list, the infiltration pond wasn't constructed, is that something that we reviewed?
yeah, I was actually part of that. They had infiltration,
Remember the tower?
they had infiltration designed for the system, and they had a basin over a whole ledge field. And no one actually did the homework to realize that all the lots in Shire Park automatically have 80% lot coverage drainage. There was a main system. There was a main system on all these lots. So they're about to encounter on a $400,000 drainage system with a detention basin that was ledge. Kind of ironic, it's an infiltration system and it was never tested. But thank God we found out that that was overlooked. It was part of the whole Shire Park, which is all got drainage and sewer within each lot. That was the feature of it. So they didn't need that.
Interesting.
Do we know that we approved all of the changes that are listed here?
That's what I'm looking at.
I recall Matt coming before us and
That was moving of the,
listing the changes, but I couldn't swear to it, if that's the list he put forward.
could pull up the, we'll pull up the document, the decision.
Okay.
The issue with, going forward, the issue was this. It came to full head when the drainage thing come up to be a problem. We didn't have an outside engineering firm representing the planning board. We had the town's engineering firm presenting all the work, along with their architect that designed the building and their engineers that did the engineering work. We never had an outside
Peer review.
peer reviewer on our behalf. And come to find out, and now if they go to start another building, probably gonna, at least my suggestion would be, even though it's a town project and there are fees due with an outside peer review, it really is worth it, as we learned from this thing. And that outside peer reviewer, which is why I asked Rich if he reviewed this as-built, and the outside peer reviewer would be reviewing this and matching up this as-built, just like in any subdivision or anything else, to make sure it was complete.
Too late to do it now? To just we'll go through one final step of reconciliation or something, or?
I think it would be a task now to go back and go
Gotta go.
from the originally approved plans and go to the modifications, and some of these departures here, the air conditioning unit, well, I guess it's unit area, so, I mean,
That's
that's,
the pad, the size of the pad.
Yeah.
yeah, so that really isn't a big issue as far as I can see, but
It looks like we didn't have a written decision to change, which was to move that
So we-
guardrail and the lights.
So we have no comparison to the original plan. We have a list of changes that we don't know if it's complete or not. And we're being asked to approve something without any of it being presented by the presenter. I'm not very comfortable approving that.
Yeah, I understand.
So we'll.
there really should be someone from the building committee or their engineer or architect that should be going over these items here.
Right, I agree. I'll take this back. Give it all.
And I will have the owner representative come before the board.
We approved the tower relocation, obviously.
Remember that one,
That I
yeah.
remember.
Remember
Yeah,
that
that's
one.
kind of big.
And we also approved a
The
change to the
guardrail.
guardrail. Remember that?
All of the
discussion?
catch basin changes were done because this was a building that was bought that was never inspected by the landscaper that built it. So when they actually got into the drainage system, they found that all the manholes were at the wrong elevations yet. And they had this basin put in that didn't need to be put in, et cetera, et cetera. So what they did was they changed some grading to make all of the manholes work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So,
No,
no.
I don't know.
I closed the door because it was noisy in the outer corridor, that's all. Oh, well,
Oh, sorry about that. That must-
No wonder nobody's here.
I didn't notice, I was on the door.
closed door meeting, that's good. Knowing that we're postponing for a month, is it still now, do we revisit the decision, have Beta get involved or some other peer review group?
I think that, personally, I think the changes are so minor.
They're minor,
At this
okay.
point, I think if they can explain to us what the changes were and
Hmm.
whether they were here or not, that should suffice.
And-
Yeah.
and we can ask Rich to take a look as well. So-
To Erin's point, is that a complete list of what changed from the original proposed plan?
The changes from the original plan should be the ones listed on the,
Yeah, should be.
the index
Yep.
there. Yeah.
All right,
Do they have to move out for a month?
no. When does the temporary permit expire?
I don't think it does.
I don't think so either.
Well, I don't know, maybe,
It
because
does.
sometimes,
I was at the meeting when
yeah,
they were granted that.
Yeah.
I was not on the board, but.
right, in the
was in
audience, yeah.
I think they,
We don't want,
That would be tough.
yeah,
they might be
It
outside.
expired June 30th.
expired June 30th?
Last June?
This past June, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bad for a town project.
Jeepers creepers.
We do want public safety.
Perhaps we ought to create
Have
a
another
Safe
motion
town,
in there
but-
somewhere.
motion to grant a temporary occupancy permit until we deal with the
I think
final.
only the building inspector can do that. He might have already done that.
He may, but
Yeah,
We can
okay.
only
look at
recommend,
that, Rich?
remember?
would you?
You can make a recommendation.
Yeah, we
I'll
Make a
check with them.
recommendation
Yeah.
that Bob grant them another one if indeed
If
it
he
is,
hasn't
if he
had-
hasn't done it already?
Yeah. So moved.
Sure.
Second.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Considering,
Well, I didn't see everyone say aye.
Opposed?
Everyone
Yeah.
didn't say aye.
considering dispatch for 4 towns are up there.
All right,
All abstain.
Aaron abstains. All right, 5 Shire Drive is the next item, right?
So that,
Somebody knows
they're
it's,
they, asked to continue.
Request for continuous discussion till October 8th. So we need a motion to continue the,
We don't need one, I don't think, Walter, because
it's not a public hearing. Okay, fine.
It's not-
Moving on.
Okay.
Bristol Pond Estates is here.
Okay.
Bristol Pond Estates, yes, let's do Bristol Pond Estates. Elizabeth,
Well, can you wait 5 minutes? Sorry.
wait.
Why?
7:40.
It's not a public
20.
hearing.
It says
Sandy
7:20 on here.
knows.
Says 7:20 on the agenda.
Is somebody else coming?
Well, they could be, I don't
Sandy
know.
Knoll, there's 7:30.
Well, Bill Ronco's here.
Bill Runker's here.
Well, yeah, but 7:20 Bristol Pond is,
I guess you told him 7:40,
But the agenda says 7:20.
which is a fact.
all right, I'm gonna make a command decision. Elizabeth, you're gonna talk about Bristol Pond Estates.
Okay. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Betsy, how are you? Hi, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Maitland for Bristol Pond Estates.
Need the mic.
Microphone,
Oh, sorry, sorry. Oh, I should have-
a little green dot.
Hello.
Is it green dot on?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Elizabeth Maitland for Bristol Pond Estates. Until just a few hours ago, frankly, I thought we were in superior shape on this. I thought everything was going along extremely smoothly. As you probably know, the guardrail is in. The street trees have been going in this week. There's been all sorts of activity up there. and things have, I think, been going quite well. We also have an email that we'll talk about in just a little bit regarding the lighting, the streetlights up there, that we need some input from the board for to decide how to proceed with that. However, just a few hours ago, we heard, well, first of all, I received an email from Mr. McCarthy indicating that the caliber of the street trees was less than the regulations require. So I immediately
What were they?
What are they?
Which caliber did they use?
2.5.
What's wrong with that?
3 is in the 3-inch calibers in the regulation.
So in it, the regulations, the ones I saw online, do in fact require 3
Right,
inches.
so
I'm sorry?
you'd need a waiver on that.
Okay, thank you. The problem is, of course, I called Michael Rosano straight away. It took him a while to get in touch with his landscaper, and at first he thought it was a mistake because the bill that he in fact paid for those trees did state 2.5 inches, and he didn't quite understand why they would have been ordered because the same landscaper did the previous street trees that seemed to have complied. However,
How did
he
this
then-
come up?
I'm sorry?
Just curious, how did this come up?
Apparently, a resident called Mr. McCarthy to complain that the trees are not the correct size.
Street trees are never sold in one caliber dimension. They're sold 2, 2.5, 2.5, 3, 3, 3.5. So what were these? Were these 2.5, 3, or were they 2, 2.5?
2.5, 3. And it's my understanding, however,
Then that's fine.
that what happened was the 3-inch caliper is very unusual. The smaller trees, 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 caliper, apparently is the most popular street planting size. And I know that not only did the landscaper say that, but I wasn't quite sure, so I did take a real quick look at all the surrounding towns. One is 1.5, one is 2.5. The only town that I saw that was 3-inch caliper was Westwood. Some of the surrounding towns, in fact, don't even provide for a caliper, but at least I did verify what the landscaper said, because I don't know if he was just trying to say, gee, you know.
That is
my
because
fault.
it's almost impossible to calculate a caliber when you're buying 30 trees. The way this has been for the 15 years I've been doing this stuff and 6 years on the board, a 3-inch caliber, 2.5 to 3 inch is a 3-inch caliber. When you go 2, 2.5 inch, then the tree is noticeably smaller. I mean, Mr. Ronco will tell you the same thing. If they're putting in trees that are labeled 2.5 and 3,
Yes.
that, to me, you can't buy a tree that just says 3-inch caliber. You can't do it.
Well, and apparently they're very hard to find, because everyone wants the 2.5 calipers. He said, in order to get a 3-inch, if I could even get one, it would not be this fall, it would probably not even be in the spring, and it may not even be next fall. So the landscaper actually made the decision
That's a
to
shame.
take the 2.5 because that's all he could get in the quantity that he needed. So I will be very happy to request a waiver on that particular item, please.
And if the rest of the board feels, I don't believe you need a waiver. I think that's the right size.
Okay.
If you look at Meeting House, you'll see the trees they put there are, at the biggest, they're 2, 2.5, and they may be 1.5, 2. That's what the town put in up in Meeting House Road. So, I mean, I don't know how this all generated, but that's like a waste. He should have put those trees all the way in. You cannot buy a tree that says 3-inch caliber.
Just
Can't buy it.
because a resident complained doesn't mean that it's a fact,
Of course it
right?
doesn't.
So it sounds like the trees are 2.5, 3s,
Which is what you get. That's what we put in.
so
So it's a non-issue.
we've looked
It's a
into it.
non-issue.
It's a
Well, we need to,
non-issue.
Right here.
need to measure it to verify what was being stated.
Measure what?
but-
If the trees, if the bill of sale shows a sale of trees from a nursery, 2.5 to 3, we don't have to go measure them. I mean, what are you gonna be doing? Police?
Well,
That's absurd.
yes, in fact, they are.
That's absurd.
Um,
I'm sorry.
And that's another problem, because apparently several of the residents have been out and about today, measuring the trees,
No,
dictating to the landscaper which tree they want in front of their house, asking them to alternate the trees, to put the nice tree or whatever tree they want in front of their house. And at least one of them, and I understand several, were actually badgering the landscaper. The landscaper was so upset this evening that he said he quits. So I think he's almost finished putting the trees in, but he was extremely upset this evening. And he, in fact, was scheduled, as soon as he got all these street trees and the open space trees in, which I believe were also going in today, that he was going to then move on to the residence lots. I have signed agreements from all those residents who are interested in having us look at their lots and have some plantings put in. I have signed agreements giving us permission to do that. I had indicated to them that once we had that and once the landscaper was available, he would come onto their lots, take a look to see what the conditions are there, to see, in fact, what is necessary and what is feasible to install. After that, he would then make the recommendation to the trust. The trust would then go back to the owner and say, this is what we believe we can offer you for the screening that we believe that you need.
I don't know, is the planning board controlling the subdivision or other neighbors? I guess that would be my first question.
Well, that
They're
seems to be what's
They are
happening.
not supposed to interfere with a contract with another party. If they have a complaint, they should be talking to Rich, and Rich will bring it to the board here. But right now, I don't see anything being done wrong.
And the process you just described is what we all agreed to.
That's correct. That's correct.
So now we get a
And-
delay for no reason.
But now he's indicated to the owner that he does not want to go on to the individual lots. He said some of them apparently were very,
I wouldn't blame
very
him.
unkind to him. And from my
Wouldn't blame.
personal experience dealing with emails, and I have dealt with a dozen people up there, and I can tell you some of the people were absolutely lovely and have been a delight to work with. Some of them are far less so. And he was very upset. He said, you know, look, I'm trying to do my best up here, and I just don't know if I feel comfortable going onto these people's lots and being yelled at
Well, that's
some more.
between you and the neighbors. That's a personal jurisdictional thing, and you're well-equipped to handle any issues they may have with that. As far as the board goes here, they're holding up our project for no reason. They have no jurisdiction, no, they have any right to talk with any contractors there, and I hope you have enough time to put the rest of the street trees in. That's what
Well,
we're
that's,
concerned with.
he plans to.
Good.
He's been up there working fast and
Great.
furiously.
Okay.
And it's just, you know, frankly, been a bit of a setback because we thought we had been doing so well, and everything was going quite well. And I must say, some of the neighbors have come back and said, gee, the street trees look great. Thank you. The guardrail looks great. Thank you. Looking really good up there. So, but clearly, some of the residents are, in fact, in touch with Mr. McCarthy, and they seem to be fortified in some way. I understand the last time I was here, you made it, I thought, very clear to me that the issue with the lot plantings is between us and the
It
residents.
is.
Mr. McCarthy asked me to report to you on that tonight. He said you wanted to hear from me. That's why I'm going into this detail. We do hope that we can talk the landscaper into going back in there, because frankly, we would like to get, in fact, I sent out releases today for them to take a look at before we even reach an agreement. And I said, as soon as we reach an agreement, while the landscaper's there, he's ready to get going. We would like to get this wrapped up. But
The
it's-
history here is that this whole exercise was done on the behalf of the residents.
Yes.
Because the perception was that the developer wasn't quite finishing the way he wanted, way he promised. And so they're losing sympathy on members of the board here with their behavior.
Well, we understand that they have a right to be upset. We're late, we're very, very late getting this done. I mean, I'll take the responsibility for that. But I have to...
This is a whole different issue.
I just have to say, it's just been, I thought we were making such great progress, and it just is sort of a kick in the teeth, if you will, that, you know, we think we're doing great, and we get this in. So I will continue to deal with that. We have got to talk to, because I don't know who we can find at this late stage to go up there and take a look at the lot lines. He had understood he was going to do it, he had planned to do it, but as of this evening, he is angry. So we have to calm him down and hopefully get him out there so this can all be done this planting season. That is our goal. And if the warrant didn't close so late, I would still like to, so early, I'm sorry, I would still love to get this on the warrant, on the town meeting warrant. It closes September 26th, there's no way I can do it. So, but obviously the bounds are in. That too, as you probably have heard from Mr. McCarthy, was an issue. They were out there measuring the bounds and
Again.
giving those installers also a very hard time.
They have no rights. Those bounds are put in and surveyed and put on an as-built. No one goes measures anything. This is insane.
So it's just,
It was a question of the balance being put in based on the regulation requirement as far as the exposure amounts, so they were flush to the ground. That was the,
Really?
yeah.
So that's where we are on that.
That would be a planning board and an engineering review decision, that's all.
You mentioned an email.
Yes. Earlier today, I learned, first of all, the paving is scheduled to go in, I believe he said October 16th and 17th. So that's good news.
So you want the trees in with the heavy equipment before the paving's done?
That's the plan.
Okay.
They should all be in. They should all be in this week.
Okay.
The issue that we have is on the streetlights. Apparently, who is Eversource? Eversource has given us 3 options to put the lighting in. Let me just pull that email for a little bit so I read it. I'm not that familiar with this issue.
How many lights are in your subdivision, Elizabeth?
What's that?
How many street lights are involved? 3.
Okay, this is from Mr. Rosano earlier today. We heard back from Eversource, and they've given us, he says 2 options. I think there's a third. Number 1, if we install with a meter, Nasiti Trust will pay the bill until the roadway is accepted, and the meter will remain in place for the town to take over the payments. The disadvantage of this is the meter itself will be on a stand in the front of the open space section and remain there even after the town takes over. They cut the wires for the meter and cannot splice after the transfer. Michael is saying that will be unsightly. I don't think anybody really wants to see that.
That's a DPW call, and normally they just pay a flat monthly fee and they don't put meters in.
That's what I was going to
That's a
suggest.
DPW call.
Yeah, the second is the lights are direct wired
Yeah.
without a meter. Bill goes directly to the town. Obviously, you're not going to accept the street
I
straight
don't think there are any
away.
meters in town on streetlights. None.
that?
I don't think there are any
Okay.
streetlights with meters in the whole town.
So then I would suggest, and I think as I understand from Mr. Rosano, there's like a flat monthly rate per
That's what
light
they
to the
charge.
town.
Yep.
And I would suggest that the town would
But you
I'm
should
sorry.
check with Bob McGee and just get the
Okay.
okay from them. That's their jurisdiction.
All right, then I will check with him, and that's really the only other issue we were looking for input.
Great.
And I think that's the only one, the only big issue
Do we
outstanding.
have a date for when they're going to be installed?
No, we do not.
We do not.
Because and he went on to say, it's Island Lighting, they're purchased. He said he's paid over
At least they'll be in.
$14,000 to them. And he said any help from the town would be appreciated. I know for a period of time, Bob McGee was trying to use his good office.
Yeah,
That was at least to get
I
get
know
it
Jim.
going.
I know Jim O'Neill. I can call him and see when he can get those in.
Because
Okay.
he's been paid, and just waiting for them.
Okay.
So that's really the only pending issue,
Great.
and then we'll get the as-built, we'll get the meets and bounds, we'll get you the finalized deeds.
The
And
paving is tentatively scheduled October
October
16th and
17th
17th.
and 18th, I'm
17th,
sorry.
18th, okay.
17th and 18th. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Good evening.
Sir, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, Brian Cataldo, 12 Bristol Pond. How you doing? So, I mean, we painted the residents in a very poor light, but I don't, I've
Some
never-
of the residents.
Some of the residents, I mean, but I know that the board, you said, is losing patience with the residents, so I think we're just taking that at face value. One woman saying that with no proof of any of that. The trees, some of them are less than 2 inches, okay? So the minimum spec's 3 inches, and these are less than 2 inches. It's not like people going out and policing them. That's just, those are really tiny trees. I mean, I think some are, should be replaced. I'm not saying to replace all of them, but
But
none
you're-
of them
you're-
that I
you're-
saw were
But your
3
channel
inches.
is to call the town administrator. On the length of a tree, the measurement can
I'm just
vary
coming
from
here.
the base to the top. So basically, like I said,
It's not 3-inch caliper measurement
Right.
spec on the
the
drawing.
3-inch caliber qualifies as a 2.5 to 3-inch caliber, as I said. That's how they're sold. The person that's buying the trees is not entitled to measure the caliber up and down the whole tree in every tree. He buys them from a nursery where they're labeled. As long as the nursery bill of sale shows those specifications, that's acceptable to the town.
John, if the path is through Rich, then the path back should be through Rich, right? So I don't know that we want to engage in this conversation.
Well, it only comes back if there's decisions are made and changes.
But that's my point.
That's all. I mean, this is,
I mean, these are gonna be Norfolk's trees. These are not, Bristol Ponds trees. These are Norfolk's trees. If you guys wanna accept them as that, that's, perfectly fine. Just wanted to point out that you're not getting what was specified. And the standard doesn't say 2.5 to 3. It says 3, and the standard says they must be at least 3 inches. So,
That's
and they
an
measure
indi-
6
that's an
inches up. You're
industry-
not measuring all the way up and down the
It's an
trunk. It's
industry
6 inches from
standard.
the ground.
It's an industry standard. They don't sell trees that say 3-inch caliber.
Okay.
That's all I'm telling you.
Why is it specified on the plan
I-
that was
I-
approved? I mean, I didn't approve the plan. I didn't make the
All
plan.
right.
I mean, and the boundary markers, people aren't measuring those, but they don't want to hit them with their lawnmowers because they're sticking up so high. So I think that's a legitimate concern. I don't think these are outrageous. I've never talked to the landscaper, I've only gone through Rich, and I don't really even say much, because I'm pretty happy with everything.
The
I just
bounds
want
being, the bounds being high is legitimate concern.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right, yep.
But when we're painted in a light that we're complaining and everything like that, but we have legitimate concerns here. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Rich, when you observed the trees, what did you see?
They looked smaller than the spec in the regulation.
Can you get us the bill of sale from the purchase of the trees? Thank you.
That would help. That would help.
Yeah.
Thank you for your input.
I think this is another Jonathan neighborhood maybe he wants to speak.
In this year presentation.
Oh,
I was expecting to be a little delayed by last time.
oh, okay.
You wish to add any comments, sir? No,
This
okay.
is what was said earlier. We can't really.
Fair enough, okay. Anyone else care to comment? Elizabeth?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one final point. I did send in to Rich earlier today a request for the release of Lot 12 that I would hope the board would consider favorably. We have done everything you have asked for us, asked of us, and I think we're on good stead here. And we've had inquiries which have been communicated to Mr. McCarthy of interest in that lot. We are not in a position to negotiate with anyone while that lot has not been released. We will not do that in good faith.
And you still have a high bond in
We
place,
still have
right?
high bond
Okay.
in place. That's
But-
your security.
So I think that was at the point where I think Mike had mentioned when he wanted to get to that point, that peer review engineer would go out and do an inspection of what's been done in relation to the approved plan. And
Shame
come
on
up
them
with-
if the bounds are too high. They gotta go dig those up,
Yeah.
resurvey them, and put them in flat.
We have relayed those concerns directly to the engineer, who apparently indicates they've got a piece of equipment that can come by and cut them at some point in time. I have no idea how it works, to be honest. But they were aware of the regs. They intended to comply with the regs.
You normally cut them at the bottom, though.
I have no idea. I have no idea. That's what I was told by
Okay.
Mr. Rosato.
Okay. What?
They cut the top.
Normally, there's a little pin in the top, so when you go to find them, you can locate them with the pin. Anyways, that's something that Rich can follow up on with the DPW. That's easy enough to follow up.
Yeah, so we have been corresponding along the way with Surveyor and Mike
Okay.
about getting those bounds
Great,
lowered,
Mm-hmm.
so they weren't an issue for for people in the yards.
great.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
we'll circle back. So at this point, then, if the request to go to Lot 12, this is where Mike had said he wanted to defer, to go out and do a punch list of, evaluate
Okay.
the work's been done in relation to what's being held.
I think the bond, what's it, 220,000? That is far in excess of if they did nothing else to cover it. So I think it's punitive to hold back the lot at this point. I really do. That's just too much. So I would be in favor of releasing that last lot, re-releasing it.
Do you want to wait till, as Rich said, we review what has been done and hasn't been done, or you?
I just think by a visual inspection that he's got
Yeah.
a bond covering twice
Yeah, I
what has to be
understand.
done, that's all.
All
And it stops
I
them
don't
from
see how,
selling it.
based on the history of this lot, we can release the lot without having some confirmation that the work is being done to
Yeah.
the agreement. So if someone wants to say that the work has been done to the agreement, then we can have a conversation about releasing the
I
lot.
agree.
You been out there to
and-
see it?
Some of the work?
I
Yeah.
have, I know.
Yeah, I have been out there, yes.
All that's left to be done is the plantings and the pavement, correct?
Plantings, the pavement.
And the light.
The street trees.
The lights.
That's what you're paid for.
Yeah.
We'll be happy, I think he already provided you the receipt for that.
I think you did, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy can't sell the last lot unless it's released.
That's right. That's right. And the...
So who here is gonna say that the work has been done based on the approved plan?
I would say that enough work has been done, that the bond that we have in place is well enough to cover what has to be done, I would.
Should it turn out that it isn't done, is what you're saying? Yeah, okay.
All
Rich,
you gotta do is-
what's your opinion?
I don't disagree that work has been done, but I would think you'd want to stick to having it go out, evaluated by the engineer, provide you the punch list as was, expected to be done as part of this step to make sure everything's in order to release.
And the engineer is paid it?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I know Mike was reluctant to do that earlier because he wasn't quite in a position to be able to, and you can discuss it with Mike, but my recollection was that he wasn't in a position to want to do that at that point, but now there is an interest, which he's communicated, to sell the lot. So I think it makes sense
Well-
just to,
We've never fine-tuned the actual cost to complete, right? We have 3 different costs to complete, one with extra island plantings, one with different, so we never did the first step to itemize what has to
so
be
it
done.
does need a reconciliation, yes, it does.
Well, I would simply ask that you know my position quite clearly on that lot release. I don't want to reiterate that. I put it in my letter. I think you have absolutely no right whatsoever to have done what you did. I believe that we have done everything that you have asked. The bond is more than sufficient. I think you got our attention, which is what I understood the reason for the lot being pulled was. You got our attention. We have fully complied. I believe to keep this lot off the market, which in essence it is exposing the town to damages, frankly. And we are not going to market that lot while the lot release is pending. So I just want to point that out to you. I don't know what more you want from us. You've got the bond, which is
Well,
your statutory right.
I hear you and I understand it, and I personally feel, as Rich described it, that we should take that last step, send the engineer out there, confirm that these things have been done, and then take a vote to release the lot. So I'd like that last step to be done.
Well, at this point, I would like to ask to confer with my client, because frankly, as soon as the paving is done, he's going to ask for a lot release. So
Well,
at that point in
we're-
time.
we're
you-
gonna have a meeting-
I'm sorry, not
we're
a
gonna-
lot release, a bond release.
Yeah, we're going to have a meeting prior to that date, because
Okay,
we meet again on
October 8th.
October 8th.
Great.
okay.
So,
But he just doesn't want to spend additional funds on an engineer if they're going to be going out there after the paving goes in October. That's my point. I don't want to authorize an engineer going out there and us incurring the cost for that if he's going to go out in another month and do it for the bond release. So at this point in time, if that's your feeling on it, I'd like to confer with my client.
feel free.
And I'll follow with correspondence to you. But
Okay.
at this point, I think it's just that's wasting money.
Okay,
All right.
feel free. Feel free to
Okay, thank
confer
you all,
with me.
gentlemen. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Let's see, next, what's the next item here? Rich, which,
And,
Sandy Knoll. Okay, Sandy Knoll. Sir.
Sir.
Grab yourself a mic and should be green. Try the other one.
That is green. Good evening, guys. Betsy. We're here for another release. We've done quite a bit of work on the, actually, I think we finished, but we have a couple of little items, and I'm looking for the final bond release. We approved the, hopefully on October 8th, you'll recommend this for approval by the community.
there's a bond reduction request.
Yeah, I
And
know.
lower down in on the agenda, there is the referral to the planning board from the Board of Selectmen for a report
Yeah,
for acceptance of the road.
yeah.
For-
I was looking for the bond figure.
Oh, the bond figure.
But
It's in your packet.
Right here,
There's
Walter.
a report from Beta.
okay, in the back of the beta report? All right, very good, yeah.
So, as usual with these, don't we ask DPW to approve them?
Not what the engineer does.
Not when the engineer does.
No,
Either one does it.
yeah, either one, yeah, one or the other.
So what's Beta saying?
Beta says 6879. Here's the remaining bond that's recommended compared to what we just reduced a meeting or two ago to 22.
Out to about 22.
Yeah, 22,729 and 6 cents.
So the request is to reduce it to 6,000?
68, yeah, right.
And we have no reason not to.
I think that's correct. Questions from the board member? Rich, you comfortable with this number?
Yeah, yes, with the number, yes. There are things on this punch list that are identified by, from Beta. Actually, it's not really, it's really only the certification, the maintenance is the one that you're gonna take care of.
Yeah, we're going to
The
pump
maintenance
that,
records?
and I'll give you all the
Yeah.
maintenance records regarding the
And then I do
drainage
need-
manholes, et cetera.
And then I do need to just talk to DPW Water Department about the pipe, the material size and the pipe of the water line and the as-built plans. Their surveyor wasn't involved with the water installation, so they're not gonna certify that location.
Yeah.
And then I understand Mr. Ronca spoke to Al Finney with the Water Department about.
I didn't, but Mike did.
Mike did? Okay.
Yeah, we on the as-built, we've located all the water the mains and the shut-offs, et cetera, as the plan. They were all the water, when it was installed, was inspected by both the DPW and, I think we had a private concern at the time also. But anyway, that's all been verified.
And then the issue with the shut-off valve outside, it's on the private property, not within the right-of-way.
Uh-huh.
We have a shut-off valve that's approximately 1.5 feet beyond the easement.
Yeah,
It doesn't, thinking about it, we would have to cut the pipe
yeah, and relocate it.
and relocate it, and that's only going to be, if you'll have a connection, it's only a prescription for
A leak.
future leak.
Yeah,
And
I know.
we spoke to the Al at the water department. He said a lot of the shut-offs in the community are not on town property
This is
also.
the shut-off
but
for the hydrant or for the water service?
This is just strictly the water service.
The service.
Oh, okay.
Are these conditions the reason why we're holding the $7,000? Or are these conditions to reducing to $7,000?
These,
That's the $1,000 for the relocate water shut-off. So that's still that's part of the $6,900.
yeah, there's $1,000 being held there.
Yeah.
So we're saying the conditions you're listing, Rich, are why there's still remaining
Money
money
being
in the
held,
bond.
correct,
Right.
yes. Yes.
And it sounds like that relocation is acceptable to the water department. Leave it alone, in other words.
Non-relocation.
Yeah,
Leave it alone, yeah.
But
I just-
what's before us today is to reduce the bond to 6,800.
Right.
that's
Correct.
correct. That's correct.
Yes. And just discussing what's in that report.
All right, you recommend reducing the bond to 6,800.
Yes, I do recommend that.
All right,
Yes.
so we need a motion to reduce the bond from $22,729.06 to $6,879.69.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is a unanimous vote. There you go, sir.
Thank you. You set up a time for October 8th? I'll be on the meeting for October 8th.
We haven't set up a time yet, but we'll get back to you with a time.
I'll haunt you, you know that.
Okay. Yes.
All right, next,
Thank you.
good night, yes. Next, I guess we would take on Camger, right? They're, gentlemen,
That was scheduled for
8:45, yeah, well, we
if
can,
you're here.
we can,
Maybe a cancellation.
yeah, sure. There's no one else. Well, wait a minute, ma'am, who are you represent? Fair enough, okay.
Wait, so, my understanding was if it's on the agenda for 8:45, we can't hear it till 8:45.
No, it's not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing. Thank you.
So, thank you, everyone, for your time tonight.
Yep.
I know we met a few weeks ago with some of the other town members,
Would
police
you just
department.
identify yourself for the record?
Dan Iannuzzi,
Yeah,
Camser Coatings, with
Yep.
364 Main Street.
right.
It's been quite some time to get here. Some of you were around, some of you weren't, when we went for a zoning change for a piece of property at 360 Main Street. That zoning was changed to a C3 designation, and today we'd like to put in front of
Thank you.
some
Yep.
proposed plans for a new facility to go up on that property. And we're working with Spec Engineering, who will get into some of the details of the site and some of the areas of focus for tonight. So thank you for your time tonight.
Members of the board, for the record, my name's Stu Moncrief, and I'm a civil engineer with Howard Stein Hudson. This project is for a new building as part of a site expansion at 360 Main Street. The existing Camger facility is at 364 Main Street. This is directly next door. The new building is 100 feet by 250 feet, so 25,000 square feet. Setback is, actually, could we skip over to the site plan? I'm just going to talk about the site plan, and then I'll turn it over to Alex, and we'll talk a little bit about the building and how that's laid out. So the building is Zone C3. It directly abuts a residential district, so we're set back 150 feet from that district. We do have site circulation all the way around the building. Loading in opposite corners of the building, the front left and the back right. Currently, we show 50 parking spaces, although Camger believes that there's not a need for 50 parking spaces just based on their current employees that they have, the number of employees that they're looking to move over to this facility. So I think they'll be looking for some kind of a waiver on parking, probably with a land bank as needed in the future that can be built. So. Drainage will be pretty conventional, catch basins, pipes, subsurface systems. We do show a pond currently, although we're going to be making some adjustments to the site to do more kind of low impact development, green type drainage for that. Dan mentioned we did meet about 2 weeks ago in this room with Rich and the town administrator, members of DPW, conservation, police and fire, building inspector, and some of their initial, they looked at this same plan. We haven't changed it. Their initial feedback was mostly related to the bottom left of the site. As you see it on the plan, we'd shown a water tank, some propane tanks. They want to see that move to the rear of the site, which is something that we will certainly accommodate as part of the resubmittal. And we also are extending too far currently into the riverfront area, so we're going to be making some site adjustments to pull out of the riverfront area and get under the 10%.
What do the lines represent, the blue and the orange line?
Exactly. So the orange line is wetland, the wetland delineation and the setback to the wetland, and then the blue line is
Foot
the.
setback?
Excuse me?
The 100-foot
100-foot
setback or
setback,
50?
yes. Yep.
All right.
Yep. And the blue line is the river and the 200-foot riverfront setback. So, so we're looking to, we're doing test pits on site next Tuesday. We're looking to get our design buttoned up and submitted, and hoping to get this in for the October meeting. So hopefully we'll see you all next month on this. So I am trying to just get some clarification on the front yard setback. I know it's 50 feet in this area. The building's actually further back than that. So there's, I think, a little bit of ambiguity in the zoning regulations that we'd like some clarification on, either from Rich or from, yeah, just in terms of what we can do between that 50-foot setback and the front of the building, if that is actually designated as front yard or not. It seems the front yard's 50 feet. We're further back than that, but you know, as I mentioned, we just look for some clarification on that. And then I mentioned the parking reduction. That's something we would provide, you know, an area for future parking if needed, and then obviously include impervious area in all the drainage calculations. So if they needed that in the future, they'd be able to just go out and just construct it. It would be, all the drainage infrastructure would be sized to accommodate that, so. So with that, unless there's any questions on the site, I'll turn it over to Alex, and he can discuss the building a little bit.
What's the pad on the back next to the, if it's a catch basin, what's that square pad? Is that for snow?
Up here?
Yes.
That is, currently, that's proposed as outdoor storage, but I think that's gonna go away as part of the submittal. So that will not be on the plans that you'll see next month.
And where are the tanks being moved to? Did someone make a recommendation?
Yeah, we're not sure. Honestly, it'll probably go somewhere in the area of that pad that will go away. Yeah, it'll probably go somewhere back in that corner.
Where were the 50 parking spaces? Just all around the perimeter?
Yeah, so I think we had 7 in the front, we had 33, I think, along the edge, and then on the east side here, I think we had, whatever the balance is, 10 or 12.
The other site plan?
Which one?
Part of the package, the one that showed the parking?
No, I mean, you can see,
No, sorry,
this was the only plan we submitted for this, so we had about 30 along here, we had 7 in the front here, and then we had, the balance was just along here. So if we do request the reserve parking, we would provide all this, and I'm not sure if we'll be allowed the front parking or not, but we'll provide all this, and then the reserve would be over in that side.
Is the function of the building just a duplicate of what takes place next door?
We're actually moving some of the existing capacity that's happening at the 364 location, and just shifting it over to this new building.
So it won't exist where it currently exists?
That building will currently exist, yes, it'll continue to.
So all the
Sir,
functions that
sir,
are here
sir,
about...
sir, please, grab a microphone when you say this so that the audience at home can hear you. If the little green light, or you may have to, if that doesn't work, you may have to share that with your architect there.
So yes, the existing facility will continue to operate. There'll be certain operations within the existing facility that will be moving over to the new facility.
For those of us on the board who don't understand your company well, could you describe what you do, and do you use, as I understand, you're a coating company, you make coatings. Are they water-based? Are they volatile organic compounds-based? Tell us a little more about your business.
So we've been at this site now operating for 40 years within the town of Norfolk. And yes, we are a coatings and adhesives manufacturer. So that's protective coatings for wood, for metal, for plastic. We do adhesives for companies like Super Glue, where inevitably it may end up in a little 1-ounce tube. The chemistries vary, both solvent-borne chemistry, waterborne chemistry, 100% solids. So, but that's what we do at our existing facilities. So the process for that is we bring in raw materials, we process in mixing vessels. Think of a recipe. These formulas are nothing more than a recipe. The operators put them together, make sure certain QC metrics are there,
Yep.
and then they package them off, and out the door they go for sale.
Okay, thank you. And so, just one last question. And so all of those operations would be located in this building?
There will be a function of all of those operations happening in this building, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, well, while you've got the mic, I got a question for you. So I'm trying to make sense of the site on the map here, and there's currently a farm neighboring your existing building, right? So I don't understand how this lot relates to that farm. Is that farm going away?
This site is the farm,
Is the farm?
is the farm.
So you own the farm?
We bought the farm.
No pun intended, right, yeah.
Yeah, Judy Longobardi's been our neighbor now for all those years. So if some of you are familiar with the property down there was basically 2 parcels down there. So Judy cut us out this 8-acre parcel, which is the adjacent parcel to us. And Judy's plan is to just shift her residence and some of her horse activity over to the right and continue to be our neighbor.
If there's no other questions, I'll turn it over to Alex to talk about the building.
So Alex Plowski with Spec Process Engineering Construction, Vice President of Design over there. If you wanted to go back to the drawing showing the building. So Dan did a great job of talking a little bit about what Camdrew does from a building use group. These guys deal with mostly flammable, combustible liquids, which is causing the hazard issues that we're dealing with. So in the building they're at now, which is, they've been there for 40 years, but that building's been up for 100+ years. They're running into issues with code compliance as far as fire protection, containment, whatnot. So they've decided to move most of that hazardous material processing into this facility. So we're going to have approximately 7,000 to 10,000 square feet of both storage and use group of high hazard material. So, some challenges with this site.
The 2 tanks, one's propane, what's the other one?
So this is propane, this is firewater storage.
Firewater storage, okay.
So the challenges with this site is there is no water. So there's no water use coming into there, so we're doing a well, and we're doing a 240,000 gallon storage tank for firewater. Along with that, there is a lot of utility use, so the propane is there for heating, building heat.
Could you
We
speak
did
up?
propose a look at the pond. Right now, we currently utilize the pond for our sprinkler water. There's a catch basin in there. So we did look to upgrade that catch basin, relocate that catch basin, but in the first meeting, we did a full study of the pond for use for that application. But in the first meeting, with the proposed work potentially to that corner, to the town, there was a lot of anxiety about continuing to use the pond. So in which case, the only other solution for water is a holding tank.
Yeah, okay.
Are there other forms of fire suppression because of the chemicals you're using?
It's going to be a foam water system for the actual hazard area. We can't really do any other dry chemical. They're just, the quantities are too great, the areas are too large for that.
Okay.
So.
Have you gone over, I believe you talked with the fire department recently in DPW on the quantity of the water that's going to be required for water protection?
Correct.
Because that pond right now with the pumping chambers in, DEP now, as we talked about when I was on the Concom, you before me, we're going to be converting a lot of these man-made ponds and reconverting them back to rivers. And if that's converted back to a river, especially where that bridge is going to be reconstructed, you'll have no more fire suppression in the pond. So they were talking about the question of how do we get fire suppression for this building where the contagion, the chemicals are extremely hazardous. And so you've got a water tank there that holds how many gallons?
240,000.
And that's going to be supplied by what? A well?
Well, I mean, there'll be a well on site. I mean, the idea would be that tank would be filled.
Fill
So
the tank.
you truck water in to fill it up, and you
So
have to maintain it.
if they
so.
talked to you guys, I wasn't at the meeting, if they talked to you guys about running a water line down from Park Street to get a town water service there?
There has been some
fire
discussion.
protection?
Yeah, there has been some discussion of that, and I think if we have not, I know there was a calculation that could be presented to us to look at, what that kind of would look like. Obviously the 2 concerns there are the monetary look and
Right.
the timing frame for that to happen.
Because as you know, as I spoke to you during the conservation hearings, this is in a resource area that's in an aquifer by the Gold Street well. If by some chance there was ever an accident, explosion, and contaminants went into one of those streams or the Mill River, we'd lose the Gold Street well. So the reason I spoke before, this is so consequential because I think almost 2/3 of the town water is coming from that well. So the sake of the protection, safety-wise, and the ability to put out any hazard or condition quickly is obviously of the essence, as you know. So we gotta make sure that the pressure coming, and this is the fire department, I don't believe the planning board, but we gotta make sure that the pressure comes out fast enough to control any potential hazard as it's occurring, so it doesn't actually go into that Mill River and lose the water for most of Norfolk.
So the system itself will certainly take in all the water calculations, and that will be fully code compliant.
Okay.
This actually presents a better situation by moving that away from the river, the existing facility away from the river. It allows better access for the services, the fire services, versus what they have now, where there's limited access now. This will give them much better access. So I think, you know, God forbid, were something to happen, we're presenting a much better situation with the project than we exist today.
Because we just hired a new fire chief, so perhaps you can
I did hear that, yeah.
you can have a conversation with him and get the thoughts, okay? Super. Okay.
Did someone from DPW promise you that they would come back by X date with the cost and of that line coming up from Park Street?
Well, that was Bob, and like I said, I'm not sure whether we've communicated with Bob with that email to request that, or...
Yeah, I've corresponded with Bob, and I'll check in with him tomorrow. He did say he was gonna have it later today, so.
Okay, so it's imminent, in other words.
It's imminent, yes.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Discussion will happen, yes.
Yes, good, okay.
Yeah, but again, to Dan's point, you know, moving the current building will not contain any spills, you know, over a certain quantity. So if there is ever an accident at that current facility with their current operations, that is a risk factor. And is really a driving force where we're moving that material over and doing it in the new building. I mean, we've located this fire water tank and fire pump here on purpose, and part of that purpose was to be able to feed both the existing facility as well as the new facility. That was the intent. But we did hear the concerns about that, you know, visually seeing that in the front yard, so I don't think we're gonna have a problem to move the tank to the back. We can do some piping if we wanna bring it over to the campus and create a campus system, but.
And that tank only supports the internal fire suppression systems?
It'll support the internal as well as the hydrant system that's on.
Fire department shows up, that's what they're talking about.
Yep, so they'll have a 500 gallon per minute allowance.
Okay.
That'll be part of that system, yep.
The topography, how is it actually changing from what it is now? I'm thinking, when I drive by that lot, it seems kind of flat to the road in the front, and I know it goes up a little bit in the back. Is it, are you moving soil from the back to the front, or?
So there is some grade out here. It's about 172, if I recall correctly. There's kind of a knob, kind of a peak up in this area. It's about 172 there, and as we come down, it's about 136 or 134 down here. So there is a fair amount of grade change. What we're looking to do is to basically take this whole area and give or take, make it flat. So we're doing significant cut up in here. We'd be filling down in here. But overall, it looks like the site itself is going to be fairly balanced. We haven't done the cut fill numbers yet, but just looking at it, we've set it up so that it should be pretty much a balanced site. So.
One of the other things that I think is, in our minds, a highlight to the project is if any of you have traveled down on that corner, you know, we've got just through the years and through some growth, you know, you have more tractor trailers coming onto the property, and, you know, sometimes you see them where they're almost sitting in the front parking lot, and this is going to do wonders to divert those trailers, to get them right off of that corner, out of a line of sight coming around, to move them right onto the property, have that clear turn, and we just feel that'll help the situation that we see exists there now.
Are the two sites connected, or is it just across the parking area?
They will not be connected, yes.
Even the parking area wouldn't be?
No, they will be connected. Yes. Yeah, so we're proposing this driveway here, which will connect from the new site to the existing Camden facility.
So, did you want, one of the things that we did talk about was the loading, so the way the building design is a loading in the front. So we wanted to, I know for tonight, at least get some feedback from the the board relative to the loading area in the front of the building.
So it's hard to depict in this picture.
Yeah,
but
so it's right,
Right now,
it's right here.
this is a loading dock, but allocated here were, I don't know, 6 or 7 parking spaces and an allocation for some handicap spaces. So I think the clarification on the frontage and how that all works out helps us to determine, you know, exactly what we can do. And is this the front of the building? Do we move these here? Do we put a mound in the front so that visibility-wise, if there's a truck in here, we lessen that impact?
Is that the only loading dock for the building?
There's another one directly opposite corner in the back there.
Yeah, so the intent is a hazardous material loading dock and then a non-hazardous material loading dock. to try
What
to
size
separate the two.
vehicle would be loading and unloading? I mean, does your turning movement allow in the back?
It does, yes. We've set up for a WB 67 to basically come around the building here, up into this area here, and then reverse into this dock that's going to be, so the trucks would be in the back, they would be here and then here, so there's space for 2 in the back. In the front, they would just come around the site or cut across the front of the site if we keep this pavement in the front, and then back into the 2 loading docks here in this front corner.
In the back, they're parallel to the wall of the building.
Roughly how many trailer trucks per period of time do you experience?
The volume's not extremely high. I mean, you could be looking at maybe 5 to 7 trucks a day at that site.
So if all the loading, are you eliminating the loading docks at the other facility? I mean, I know you're not removing them, but are all deliveries going to be at the new facility?
There will be some transfer of materials that are specific for use in this facility, therefore there'll be a diversion from where they would normally deliver today versus when the facility's up, they'll be diverted over there. So it's not necessarily an increase, in a lot of ways it's just a diversion from one site to the other site.
But there will still be deliveries at the old building?
There'll still be deliveries at the old building, yes.
And the 5 to 7 encompasses both or just this building?
That's probably both facilities. It'll just a matter of which one they're going to, yeah.
Well, we commonly frown upon both loading any mechanical equipment and parking in front of the building. I think you would have a hard time arguing any other surface of this building as the front rather than the short one that faces the road. So I would encourage both of those things to be moved around to the side or whatnot if possible, but it's kind of an uphill battle just because of the visibility when you're coming downhill looking at this site. So the front of this building is going to be a highly visible element in this town for a long time, so.
Where are the loading docks in the other buildings located?
Well, they're really, you know, it's funny, they're almost adjacent to this dock here. They're over here.
Are they in the front also?
No.
No, you would say that would be the side of the building.
Okay. So the old
You know,
building,
to a note that you just said also about the building being there for a long time, as you can see from the renderings, we're trying to keep, with the best we can, the feel of, you know, we're sympathetic.
Yeah. right.
Enjoyed that barn for a long time, and looking at that barn, and thought that this just at least fits in best for that site, you know, in conjunction with a white picket fence and things like that. We feel that we can at least give back in that regard as best we can.
I think it's a great-looking building that fits into that farm area atmosphere. Yeah.
Intent.
Yeah.
To follow up on Aaron's comment, how difficult is it going to be to consider moving that loading dock that's on the front?
So the major concern there is just the way that we have the hazardous materials laid out in the building. Trying to keep it kind of along the exterior of the building and keep the production area in an accessible area. The other issue we do have is, I mean, if we were to move it to this side of the building, we're going to run into this setback issue with the riverfront. So we're a little concerned with adding more building, trying to build a loading dock, because again, we're not going to be able to park the trucks this way.
So the
on that
loading
side.
docks now are on the side of the Mill River.
Correct. Over here?
Yeah.
On the existing facility?
So just theoretically, it'd be nicer if they were away from the Mill River in case there was a spill. The
True.
riverfront wise, it doesn't look like that you're that much in the riverfront where you couldn't get you could work in 10% of the outer riparian in that riverfront, and with this land area, that gives you a lot of area to work in the riverfront. So I think that the riverfront line on this plan is not going to impede you if you redesign your docks. I think that will work out fine. You've got plenty of room in the riverfront area to use that. Plus, is some of that area disturbed also already?
Yeah, quite a bit of it is
All right, so if you've got pre-disturbed area, I don't, the Conservation Commission doesn't even count that as a new infraction in that
Right, yeah,
resource.
so we're limited to 10% disturbance in the riverfront area, though, so,
In
and
the-
we're currently over that already, so.
What is the whole riverfront on your plan?
So the river is in blue over here, and then the 200-foot setback is also in blue over
Yeah,
here.
but have you calculated the square feet of that whole area?
Yes,
How much is that?
it's 99,000 square feet.
And how much, if you move the docks back, how much of that 99,000 square feet would you have to work in?
If we move these docks further back over here,
If you move them where they comply with zoning, how much of the riverfront would you be using?
I'm not sure how much additional. We're over the 10% right now, so we do need to rework the site, to get under that 10%. But 99,000 gives us basically 9,000 plus, whatever is currently already disturbed, which is most of 2 buildings plus, the driveways and other unvegetated areas.
And I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but I've had the same, as Alex knows, the same concern, although it probably would never happen. But some type of a container spill on that side by the river is just catastrophic. It really is, to the whole town. And that's why if we could do anything to minimize, the area that you're gonna be having the highest chance for something to break, that would be a plus.
Well, per regulations, there will be containment for areas and things like that.
Oh, I'm just talking theoretically. It's a lot, if you're gonna unload trucks where you may spill a container, it'd be nicer to have it on
Specifically to the
other s-
dock. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah, it's just
Got it.
nicer to be on the other side of the building, that's all.
I understand.
And these are not dry goods, these are liquids that are being delivered, right?
Combination of liquid and dry, yes.
Yeah. Well, I knew the some dry, but I mean, there is a lot of liquid there.
Yeah.
Do you have any flexibility to move the slope onto the adjacent lot that I think you own? So in that bottom left-hand corner where it seems kind of steep, if you're talking about moving docks to the side, you might need, you're gonna relocate the tanks anyway. But it seems like you're limited by the boundary, but really.
Somewhat, so this area will go away, and I think if we did do loading on the side here, that would probably be an even trade-off, give or take.
Okay.
Again, we're trying to reduce the area within the riverfront, the disturbance within the riverfront, so.
Okay. It seemed like you were conforming to the boundary of the lot. You just
Yeah,
acquired.
it just,
But-
that's just kind of the way it worked out, so. But, I mean, as far as loading in front of the building, if we were to, say, eliminate this cross driveway here and the parking in front of the building and kind of berm this up and do a lot of, screening with, bushes and things like that, is that something that the board would possibly consider as far as, being amenable to, having that loading there, I think? In terms of, Dan could probably speak to this a little bit more, but if we had loading off to the side and we were coming in with trucks out onto, a platform and then turning towards the truck to collect the load and then reversing with a turn.
Well, I may have heard him incorrectly, but what I thought John was poking at was putting the loading dock on the other side of the building.
Right, that's what he's talking about.
On the other side, over here?
Yeah, just to get it away from the river. you know.
Flipping the building, I guess, right?
And then the parking would be on the left side.
Yes, yeah.
Where's the water tank going right now?
Well, it's probably going back in those
Well,
square,
we're showing it here, but it'll go towards the back of the site somewhere.
probably back in that
So
square.
if you did that, you'd have to do what, flip your internal design to get the flow
The
of.
water tank would look like a silo. Wow.
So with regard to your berm
It
that
could
you're
if it
talking
was
about
vertical,
front,
but
would
these
you
are
still
horizontal.
maintain
Oh, I didn't know.
circular traffic flow around or no?
Well, so there would be, yeah, so basically what it would be is it would be this cross-access in the front of the building would go away. All the trucks would then come in and circulate around the building, whether they were going to reverse up to this dock or continue around and then reverse back up to this dock and then depart through, you know, crossing into the existing Camden facility and then out onto Main Street. So that's something that we kind of discussed internally, and, you know, I guess we thought we'd ask, you know, what your, I guess, initial thoughts might be on that type of an approach.
Well, you're referring to a circular pattern, right?
Correct.
I think that makes sense, that's fine, but it's just the location of the loading dock that's the issue, I think. Are you planning on on that water tank to be horizontal or vertical?
We're going to be a vertical,
Oh, it's gonna look like a silo then, right?
30-foot diameter silo.
Yeah,
How tall is it?
see, you were right.
Probably around 30 to 35 feet.
Little bond thing
So
going.
240,000 gallons. A lot of-
Yeah, I know, we've got a 1,000,000-gallon one sitting
You
up
gotta do,
there.
you gotta do the math to see if running the water might be cheaper, huh?
Oh, no, we're certainly,
Wow, 'cause that's-
you know,
they're
we're certainly
expensive.
interested in
Oh.
taking a look at that, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, I think with the water, I think it's more of a timing issue probably than cost, just by the time, you know, that would have to be a public project, so it would be designed and then bid and then built, and I think it's, just time-wise, I'm not sure if it's gonna be in place, by the time.
Why does it have to be a public project? I would think they would much prefer for you to do it so they don't have to pay, union wages.
Yeah, I'm not, obviously, we didn't get into the dynamics
I
of
understand, yeah.
how the whole thing would
I-
work.
From what I understand, I don't think it has to be a public project.
Yeah, and that's something we can check with, DPW
Yeah.
and see how that might work out.
So you're talking about just kind of flipping the
I think
building?
that's what we're talking about is, yeah, do a mirror image.
Right.
But we gotta be,
But the loading docks are away from the river.
you gotta be,
Side.
just, you just gotta be careful with that, because now the loading dock is on the corner of the building that you see
That you
when you're
see-
coming down the
right.
street.
I was
So-
thinking the same thing.
Well,
And
it could
there's-
be on either side, but I think we're giving them direction to go to the opposite side that it's currently on. You
Yeah,
can put it
because-
on either side of the building near the front.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't know that we want it on the right-hand side. I mean, we can have that conversation, but, again, that's the corner of the building you're gonna see when you're coming down the hill looking at the building.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what I was thinking is that, again, I don't think loading docks are allowed in the front of the building by bylaw, so we'll have to talk about a waiver or something to address that situation. But since that's essentially the front door where all your offices are, I know it screws with the efficiency of your building, but if you pulled a dormer out of the front of the building a little bit so that loading dock was tucked in behind a piece of the building that came out, say, 20 feet, then you wouldn't even be able to see it from the street. I mean, you're not gonna see it coming from Franklin because your existing building is in the way. So really, the only view you gotta worry about blocking the loading dock is coming from the Norfolk side of things. So if you were to create a little shed off the front of your building that made the front of your building look more like the front of the building, the entrance, you could actually turn the entrance to your building to your parking, which is gonna be on the side. You could, the gable end of your building that faced the street could be, you know, you wouldn't have to have anything in there you didn't want, except windows, and it would block the loading dock on the left-hand side of the building. The only problem that doesn't solve is John's thought, which is getting the
Yeah,
high-hazard material further away from the river.
I
So-
understand, and to me, that is more important than the view coming down the hill, to me
And,
personally.
and I think per an earlier comment that I had, is the existing conditions that exist there now. Even if this does go through, it's still in some ways better than the existing conditions that we have now.
True.
Where those trailers have to, so we've got the situation now as far as line of sight and cars seeing it.
True.
This will certainly make it better, doesn't make it go away, but it makes it better.
Well, You've heard our concern.
Yeah, I think you've given us enough that we have to go back and we have to take a look at that and,
Right.
and see what we can do.
Right.
So,
So as far as the meat of the, or interpretive part of the bylaw is that in the bylaw, it talks about not parking in the front and the rear yard. We define yard, but we don't define rear and front. So it has been interpreted as that space between the street edge to the front of the building as the front yard. What they were asking about was if the front yard is 50 feet, then you park behind the 50 feet, that 50 feet to the building, is that considered the front yard? The interpretation has been the the street edge to the building, that is the front of the building. Because the definition of yard defines it that way.
But the gist of it is we don't want an asphalt field in front of the building.
Correct, yeah, no, I understand.
How many feet is the building gonna be set back from the road?
Currently, 152 feet, and that's from this corner here to the right of way, to the property line.
If you propose, I don't know, if you propose parking in the front, I'm sure there's a lot they could do to buffer if they had the first 20 feet around the building with some parking spots. Especially if you had some offices out front there and threw some windows in the front, now it really enhances the whole thing, but I think if you get parking back 100 feet from the road, that's,
Yeah, I'm looking at the rendering, and that's a giant facade, stuck in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It looks, you got the right aesthetic to it, but it doesn't take away from the massiveness of the building, the volume of the building, so if you could break down the front elevation somehow and address some of these issues, hiding the parking, hiding the loading, maybe tucking the parking on the side, getting some trees in front of it, there's some options there. I think it would be beneficial to your project.
If they go forward with the idea of parking in front, they'll have to go to, the Board of Appeals, that's a permit through that board, as you know, is. C3?
It's surrounded by, it's kind of it's an island, which was part of the conversation about their, last time they were here talking about zoning. It's kind of a little grandfathered island, and
Yeah, it's been there for a long time. Any other question you have for us, gentlemen?
I think I'm good. Thank you for your time.
thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
These are always beneficial to both parties.
Aaron,
when we have
so
this
if they
conversation.
slid the whole design back, is that useful or from a perspective
they're running out of room because the river's back there.
on the, I'm just looking at the back side of the lot.
I think they have options.
Yeah, but that can turn too. That's just a catch basin.
There's nobody here for Norway Farms, huh?
No, Rob
No.
King was, he was sick, so, but I did see him.
actually, Chad, the front of the building is only 100 feet. Looks bigger than that.
Yeah.
No, because they got the buffer, right.
No, there's not much buffer in that drawing.
Am I missing
Rendering's
something?
not doing them a lot of favors.
So this is the only green area right here.
Well, their rendering doesn't match.
So basically,
Yeah.
most of our houses are 100 feet long,
Right,
so this basically is only the size of a house.
you are correct.
So it looks like it's a big, huge manufacturing
It's like a giant pole barn.
warehouse.
Looks like a giant pole barn.
And they got offices in the front, but they don't have any windows.
Right,
I
so-
mean, they should put some windows in.
Right. And I like your idea of an awning or a vestibule, that,
They can do a little better. Sunroom door to set them straight.
All right, let's move on here.
So Rob is sick, otherwise he would be here,
Yep,
okay,
I understand. So he's looking for lot release on lot 1. He's made the deposit into the
Open
homeowners
space.
association
Yeah,
for the next lot. So that is current. There isn't any other,
and the open space is gonna be owned by the homeowners association.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's owned by the association. The conservation restriction is already in place and recorded, so that's in place.
And this is not the first lot, this is like the third lot,
This will be the third one, yeah.
third lot that we're gonna release.
We've released lots 2 and 3 previously.
The next critical path will be when we get to 5 and 6.
Yes, but the covenant, everything, all of that's been executed?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So he's looking for one lot.
I don't see anything to stand in the way. Anybody have any questions?
No.
John, you okay with this?
Yep.
All right, someone needs to make a motion?
Move to release Lot 1 from the Norway Farms subdivision.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is a unanimous vote, I believe. Thank you.
Why are we releasing them a lot at a time? Because that's how he's
That's typically the way we do
financially
it.
obligated?
It's typically the way we do it. The builder comes forward, says, I want one, or sometimes they'll say, I want 3 lots, or 1 lot, or whatever. Okay, Camber, we'll cover that. All right. Rich, you want to talk about this next one? Vote to release $2,000?
Yeah, so the Norfolk Credit Union actually had a site plan for next door themselves,
That was approved in 2006.
and, which they didn't go forward with.
Right.
But they are there next door now in a mixed-use building.
Yeah.
So they would like to get their $2,000 back that we've been holding since 2006. That was for observation money for the site plan,
Yeah.
but they never executed it,
Yeah,
they never
okay.
moved forward with it. So they're a little bit tardy on the bookkeeping.
You think?
Well, I kind of, because it pops up every month when I, we do our accounting, so,
Trying to clean that up.
yeah, I'm trying to get rid of some of these old accounts.
Anybody have any further discussion on that one?
No.
All right, need a motion.
Motion to release $2,000 from the observation fund, accounts funds for the former 2006 Norfolk Credit Union.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is a unanimous vote. Thank you. Okay, King Philip.
So what you have is like I said, I just crafted this quickly before tonight's meeting, but to finalize it, but
Where the hell is it?
we did get,
Here it is, here.
the board was forwarded some revised plans. They made a slight change to it, which was to, originally the area over that holding tank was kind of a landscape, there was a landscape peninsula. They asked to remove that, pave it, but stripe it, just for ease of plowing. At the time when they came before the board back in August, they weren't sure the load capacity of that tank, because they had to do some homework to figure it out. They provide the details of that it was a tank with H20 loading on it. They don't plan to park on it, but there will be vehicles going over it
Betsy,
for
do you have-
maintenance.
Do you have the plan? That's,
Yeah, we can,
Did you save that in the server?
that's probably your email. Actually, I don't think I saved this. did I? So one of the discussions with Joe Weed from Par Corporation as the engineer, this came up, they were sorting through this after August 5th, between now and this meeting. So the question was, does the planning board issue a decision based on the August 5th and then come in to modify it? So I took a chance, if you will, to have that minor, I'll consider minor, potentially, change to that site plan, which was reviewed by Beta Engineering, which they did not have an issue with it, nor the impervious area would be covered by the stormwater system for
Right,
the school.
yeah.
If you will, was kind of blessed in that regard. And if you look, probably 3. Yeah, so, yeah, that should be good.
No, I didn't bring the pointer. Do you want me to grab it?
Just scroll to that.
Keep going?
Yep.
This one?
So this area here is where it came out on the, we do have the other plan if you wanted to, we can call up the plan from the August 5th if the board wants to see it. But this was a peninsula area before, and they shifted the parking a little bit too. The handicap parking lined up with the entranceway going into the lower section of the school. So those were the adjustments.
And the, as you said, the Beta has confirmed that the loading, design of the tank will support the loading of vehicles going across it.
Correct. And
Even,
they did, and they also looked at the stormwater as well, because it was the stormwater for this property was designed and approved back. So there's not a
yep,
detrimental effect to the stormwater system for the school.
So I'm just hung up on the fact that the vehicles needed to keep moving, but that's not really the case, is it? A vehicle could stay on top of that tank.
Yeah, they could
And
stay on top
it's
of
not
it.
an issue, because we
Yeah.
keep saying they have to be moving, or.
Oh, no, no.
Beta
but-
looked at.
No, I mean,
All right.
it's not intended to park on it. I mean, the vehicle
Yeah.
can park on it if they want, but again, it's not intended to be.
If a fire truck stopped there to put out a fire in the building, he's not gonna sink into the ground.
Is the green light on?
No. What happened to the green light?
No, I thought we replaced the battery.
Sorry about that for you folks at home. So, yeah, the vehicles can go over, it's H20 loaded, so they can drive over, but they're not intended to. Really, the intent to do this was to keep, for snow plowing, so you run in here with a snow plow, you know, and you can just move it as opposed to plowing around, to plowing around the peninsula.
Gotcha.
So it's really more of a, you know, it helps the.
So is it gonna be striped to not parking?
Correct,
That's
yep.
my
It'll-
understanding of it.
Yeah, it'll be striped, not for parking, so. If you want, did you want to see the, for remembering the prior one, to see what,
I kinda remember it. Yep.
you gotta remember it?
Was there also a concern or a question about the lighting?
So we do have a photometric plan, yeah. If you want to,
as I recall, they said they were putting in any new lights, they were just renewing the lights on the side of the building.
Right, replace them with LED, my guess is, you know, more efficient, brighter light,
Yep,
less,
Yep.
less electric.
Yeah, the neighbors were questioning the angle that they might be on, if they were gonna shine at a different angle and penetrate further across the street, I think.
yeah, so on the bottom, the cut, yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, there probably are, I've replaced them on some of my commercial buildings, and, I mean, yeah, the LEDs are brighter, and, because typically the old-fashioned, I don't know, they're metal halide or whatever, those things blow out fast and they dim over time, and
They had the, so this is the photometric plan. They did have the cut sheet, I think, on the other one, right? You saw the, oh, there they are.
Lumens or anything.
So those are the, that's the lighting fixture type?
right.
They just said same intensity.
Pointing down?
Yep, they're pointing down, okay.
Yeah, yeah, so they're not, no, when you look at the school, it's gonna be brighter.
It's
I
gonna
mean,
be,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we'll be perfectly honest, you're putting in brand new LEDs, it's gonna be brighter.
Oh, absolutely,
So-
yeah, yeah,
but-
no, right.
But the position and
It's,
is the same position as existing. so
Correct.
it shouldn't
Yep.
be.
it's not casting at, yeah.
Yeah, just over time, the lenses on the other ones just dull and fade,
Yeah.
cloudy, and
Right. So those were essentially the summary of what they did from August 5th to today.
All right, so we have a decision in front of us. Any questions on the decision itself?
Was there any meeting with them and the abutters or the people in the area? Because I didn't know if that was a follow-up that they were gonna do, just to talk to people out there about lighting or other issues, timers on the lights. There were just some local citizens that were asking all those questions.
I think there was discussion with Meet with the Grounds.
I thought so.
With a neighbor,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if it was this lights or the other ones out front, though.
Okay.
Uh,
But there's,
Just follow up
yeah.
with Joe.
okay.
All right, we have a decision in front of us, decision number 2019-11 for the approval of a site plan for King Philip Regional School, 18 King Street. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? It is a unanimous vote. Okay, let's see, so this is, tell you what, the chair is going to take a 2-minute break and I'll be right back.
Make sure the green light's on, please.
It's been a sore spot tonight.
Apparently. Good evening, Rick Goodrow with United Consultants, here tonight for the MAS Building and Bridge project, 16 Sharon Ave in the Shire Industrial Park. There's Betsy's pulling it up. There you go. So, the project is under construction. It's basically taking place on Lot 11. MAS Building and Bridge also owns Lot 12, which is located here. This was constructed probably 5 or 6 years ago. There will be a combination of the two parking lots tying together for shared access to the two sites. So, as they've been involved in the construction, some things have come up, and we've made some slight changes to the plan. One was the elimination of that parking space. There is a parking count. They have adequate parking spaces. So we took that out and eliminated a turnout here for some grading issues. But what we're really here for tonight is for the installation of a small retaining wall to the front of the building, which is provided in the detail here. And it's to allow the handicap ramp to take place. And instead of having a wall integral to the handicap ramp face, and then along the edges of this overhead door canopy that's located here, the applicant and owner has suggested putting in a retaining wall that would run along the back of the curb line, and it would be a Versalock block wall. We did provide some details to the town and the review consultant who's looked at this as to what those wall materials would be, also railing details of what that would look like. So basically what we're here for tonight is to allow for this retaining wall. Elevations of the wall are spelled out there as about a max height of about 3 feet. There will be a railing along the edges of the ramp. And again, this is to provide handicap access to the building from the parking area. Handicap spaces are located here, loading area here, and then a ramp up to the front of the building. So that's basically what we're here for tonight, to get the board's permission for that, for the wall, the railings, and allow for the construction to move forward. They are currently, buildings coming along very nicely. Site's been paved. Granite curbing's been installed in the front portion. There will be Cape Cod berm installed when the top coat is completed. Landscaping will be done in the fall. They are anticipating coming to the board's next meeting in October, looking for an interim as-built and being able to temporarily occupy the building. So that is coming. So it is moving along nicely. And that's basically what we're here for tonight. Thank you.
Is the design of the ramp ADA compliant?
Yes. It,
You have a rendering of what that wall's going to look like, or some drawings of what that wall's going to look like, that you may have given to Rich?
There's a, yeah, there's two. There's the picture of the Versalock, but there's also a render, or
yeah,
of the
there's
building.
an architectural
Well,
rendering.
let's take a look at that.
Oh, that was, that, how many pages was that?
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me see if I can rotate it.
It's tall building. Those ladders that we're looking at there? There we go, okay.
Nice.
There you go. So you can see the high portion of the wall will be in front of the entrance, and it'll step down, and in this direction, it'll step down with the ramp, and
Yep.
you can see the ramp and the railing necessary for the ramp that's in the background. So that, and you can see the overhang, roof overhang covering the front entrance. So we asked the architect to update the plan to include what that would look like so the board could see that. And Betsy, I believe if you scan down, there's actually some pictures of the block. So that's the front of the site. Just after they had paved it, curbing went in, you can see the piers. They're trying to put the wall around.
Yep.
And that's actually the block that is proposed to be used. Versalock, rough face block, segmental block, basically about a ½ inch stagger. Each block costs
Right.
towards the building.
Was there a discussion previously about the step at the front of the ramp? Maybe not, maybe I'm just confused.
Not that I'm
I just happened to, on the previous drawing where it showed the fence or ladder, depending on how we were turned, there's like a slab. I thought there was some discussion around this, the edge of that first slab where it leads into the handicap ramp. No? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Location of it to the street, or is there something closer to the street? No?
There-
Don't let me fabricate problems, it's okay.
What are you saying, there's a step that leads to the handicap ramp?
No, there's
That would
a
be
step
terrible.
on the end of the slab.
Oh, right here, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I don't. That's, I
If we
think, just,
previously had discussion around that, or if it was too steep or something at some point.
no, I think what that's representing is, Betsy, if you could go to the first drawing that we looked at. So there's actually a small section of ramp from the parking lot to where it will turn and the level area will come up. So this is about 3 feet of ramp. So I think that's what you're seeing is the
Oh.
bottom to the top
The
of
bottom
the
line, top
slope.
line, so it looks like a rectangle.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I assume that's what they were intending to put on
Yep.
there. But yes, this is definitely higher than the parking lot.
Okay.
And this kind of came, not to go too far on this, but when it went from the 2-story down to 1-story, and then the vestibule came in, then that space between the ramp
Yep.
and the parking lot, there was a photo I sent out to the board previously that really showed there was really
Okay,
no
any further questions?
Nope.
Nope.
Then we need a motion to declare this a minor modification to the site plan.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of declaring this a minor modification to the site plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. Now that we've said that, then we need a motion to approve this particular ramp, wall, and railing system.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of this, approving this ramp, wall, and railing system, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, what about this temporary? Is that just to let us know? Because I
Yeah.
see, oh, okay, all right,
We're coming in a month.
okay,
That's
all
the
right,
plan.
okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Yep, thank you, Rick. You bet. All right, Rich, you want to take the zoning bylaw next?
Do you want to talk to Lorraine Sweeney's here for
Oh,
Lakeland Hills?
Yeah,
Lakeland Hills.
is that what,
Yeah.
that the comment? Okay, well, let's address that, so you can get out of here. Okay, Lakeland Hills, we've all seen that. I think it's that project up on Seccong Street.
Seccong Street, yep. So it was as the 40Bs before the zoning board right now.
Yep,
It was referred to the planning board for comments, back to the board. They're
right.
currently in the review process, so if the board had comments that they would like to relay to the ZBA for that, we can.
What's the
those-
current status of that? It was 104 units for a long time.
It was, now it's, at this point, it's 96 single-family homes,
96, okay,
but there are some townhouse styles too, though, so they're detached and
Yeah.
attached.
yeah.
They're,
We got a site plan that we can just throw up there, take a look
Yeah.
at?
Do you have comments, Lorraine? I think the ZBA did an outstanding job at that hearing. I think that was one of the better hearings I've ever seen. The engineer, the attorney, I think they've pretty much shown that it's gonna be physically impossible to put anywhere near that number of units on that site. Not even close. stormwater, wastewater, near sensitive areas, the vernal pools. I mean, it was a shocking meeting, really. They did an outstanding job. So I think anytime an applicant starts talking about how much do you want me to decrease the density, and of course the board didn't bite because that's not their job. I mean, you know that the thing was thrown on a piece of paper. I mean, they've got homes that 8 feet or 9 feet behind the foundation, there's a 10-foot retaining wall. And the 10-foot retaining wall is built on a slope that makes it impossible to even walk behind to build the wall. And this is how they were getting in their whatever 100 units. So it's, and they're gonna find that sewer treatment plant, they have no space for it. It's just amazing what they, when they cut through and analyzed that, it was just, I mean, he's got no detention basins, no septic field, the basins are 7 feet deep, which means the houses have to be so many feet, I mean, just incredible job. That whole, to me, that whole project now is gonna be in some major transition. I couldn't say enough about the job they did, just great.
Well, there's the plan that John is referring to.
That was the plan as of July. I don't know if it's been updated.
Is this the property next to Stop River? The other side of
Yes.
Stop-
Yeah.
That is the, wasn't July's the date on that plan, right?
July.
Yeah, that's the most recent plan. That was before the board on the September 4th.
Did you attend that meeting, Rich?
I did.
You know, we have approved developments with 20 units and 30 homes, whatever. This one is, who knows what that final number will be, but at least the way it's drawn, it's 96, right?
Correct, yep.
And we've done it on some cul-de-sacs. But here you've got, in essence, a cul-de-sac with almost 100 homes in it, with at least 2 people in each one. You've got a couple hundred people plus with one access. That is a concern to me.
The houses are actually 10 feet apart, so when you have a bulkhead going out the side, like in some of the other ones, you can't get a vehicle or a tractor or a lawnmower through there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing in this, it doesn't show the steepness unless you can read the grade lines.
Yeah.
But can you imagine having a small townhouse and then 8 or 9 feet at the back of the house, there's this 10-foot wall, solid blocking wall that they crushed.
Going up?
Going up.
Going up, yeah.
So the first floor, you look out your first floor and you see
Looking
this
at a
wall.
wall, yeah, right.
And then on the other side of the wall, the grade probably is at a 1-to-1 slope, which means it's impossible to build the wall.
Yeah.
So that's how they arrived at all this number of units. Classic example of units fitting on a piece of paper, but not
fitting in
getting
the-
on the actual land. Yeah.
And they have their own septic field design as part of this?
They haven't done any of that yet, so they don't even know how big it will need to be, and it's abutting all of these drinking wells, which are classified as sensitive areas, so.
Now, there is water going down Seccong Street. How far is it, it's under construction at the moment. How far down is it going, Rich?
The gas is going down now.
Gas,
It's not water going?
They have water already.
there's water there, yeah.
Okay.
Gas line's going in now.
This is high property though, from the ground level, so I'm sure there's some loss even going up, let alone the number of houses.
The grade is about, in 2 or 3 of the spots on that parcel, the grade changes are in the range of 40 feet.
Oh, you can see the contour lines are so close together.
I walked that property a long time ago. It's next to Walpole Gun Club as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
That's why I only walked it once.
Rich, how did the ZBA leave it?
It's still under the, at the meeting, the peer review engineer laid out a bunch of things they need to address as far as grading goes, and
Yeah.
it's still at a higher level to review to kind of get to where they need to be.
Yeah.
As far as looking at soils, looking at the grading, the design. they wanted to see some design information related to what the wastewater treatment plant, you know, feasibility of it. And they used they would like to see something equivalent to what was presented to the ZBA with Abbeville, because that one was proposed a wastewater treatment plant. You know, the wastewater treatment plant is a Mass DEP permit, but the ZBA wants to make sure that at least going in, there's the feasibility, the elements to
Yep.
make sure that works.
Yep. Okay,
So
so
it's-
they
it's
they
a
have-
ways away. I
They
mean, that's-
identified a whole bunch of issues and said,
Yeah.
go back and.
I mean, the issues that you spoke of are the same issues that,
You have to prove that all the water can fit on the site.
Yeah, yeah, recharge.
you know, the sloping, the topography, and clearing. and-
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments here from the board?
So they were actually looking for feedback from this board, the ZBA?
Yeah, it's a common practice to refer it out, and if you want to write back with specific comments, you certainly can.
Good luck. How's that?
Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't really a zoning, but, you know, I'm definitely getting ahead of myself, but I see common space, and, you know, Bristol Pond comes into question, which does not have an HOA, so who is this gonna have an HOA?
We don't have any, it's a 40B project.
Yeah, so there will be,
So.
Doesn't matter what we say.
well, there is an HOA, yeah, there is an HOA. At least that's the way it's proposed right now.
Yeah.
I was going through the application documents, and they're proposing HOA to maintain the road system and the
Sewer treatment.
stormwater.
Yeah,
What's that?
the sewer
Yeah, the
treatment
sewer
plant.
treatment plant, yeah.
I just, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just thought I'd ask questions. Who's
Yeah.
gonna be maintaining all these?
Yeah, so as of right now, it's proposed as an HOA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned traffic flow, but I thought of more than two people in a house. You got families in every house, you probably got 200 kids waiting for school buses. Maybe you need a stoplight, there's just a lot of impact with the number of people that are sitting in that small space.
Right.
Yeah.
And where is parking?
So that's one of the issues that I did write to the
Yeah.
board about the
One
parking.
of the
'cause-
neighbors spoke up.
yeah.
Her sister has in a condo complex in, I think she said Mendon or Milford. And they're allowing 1.5 spaces for each home, but everybody there has a child with a car or two.
Right.
So right now, there is a major controversy and fighting going on in the association because no one has room to park their cars. And of course, when you have company or deliveries, it's mayhem over there, she said.
Right. Delivery, emergency vehicles.
I told Rich, the big game is, they always say, well, zoning calls for 1.5 spots per unit when you're talking multifamily. But when zoning talks about that, like in the B1, they're talking about it for a 30,000-foot lot. So they want to put the same parking requirements on lots that are 4,000 and 5,000 feet, which is silly. We want this parking requirement on lots that are, like 5 to 8 times the size of those. So the same parking criteria that they're using, they're saying, well, look, we're complying, although they don't have to comply with zoning because it's a 40B, but we're complying with zoning. We've got the parking you guys call for. The problem is your lots are like 1/5 the size, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, the compound, I mean, the stacking, because the house is close to the street, so there's not even stacking distance even on the lot itself.
Yeah, sometimes you put a townhouse, you have a garage under, and you can put one car in there, then you can put one car in the driveway before you get to the street, so
Right.
you've got two there.
I mean, they do
that's the two
have
spots.
garages, but it's just a matter of, the whole, activities happen, functions happen.
Sure, but even the way it looks like it's designed, there's no driveway to put that second car. in.
Right, yeah, no,
That's
right.
my point.
So this is gonna be families in these 3-bedroom apartments here, and the families have children, and kids get older, and the first thing they do at 16, they want a car.
Yeah,
So-
that's right,
No, I mean, they'll need to look at that design, not only, that's an issue that they're gonna have to try to figure out, because even the pocketed areas that they're showing, I mean, they're not you have a few areas, if you see on the top of the page,
Mhm.
and then down lower, but they're so remote necessarily. And that's not really, they have some work to do.
You think? Yeah, and I'm still hung up on the one access. There's nothing you can do about it, because the guy doesn't own a second access, but it really bugs me that you got that many people with kids and whatnot in one road in and out, and big storm, tree comes down, you got fire in there, you can't get at it. I don't know how to solve that, but that's an issue.
Well, they're gonna have to make the best to address that issue. I mean, it's certainly, it's a 40B, so it's not like that's,
Yeah.
I know it exceeds the subdivision regulations, but that's.
Yeah.
What's next?
You want to tail them into any particular comments, just comments do you want to draft into a letter to send the board, or just your comments speak for
I
themselves?
think we should draft a letter and collect the comments that we've got and send it to them. If they ask for comments, we ought to give them comments.
We can draft a letter and.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
have
please.
the board review it.
Please do.
Okay.
Do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Well, because it's a 40B, I think the primary issues would be health and safety.
Just need to identify yourself and then, yeah.
Lorraine Sweeney, 14 Stop River Road. Where it's a 40B, I guess the primary issues would be health and safety, and traffic, one in, one out, is obviously an issue. At the hearing with the ZBA, there was concern communicated, actually by myself. In the northeast corner, they're showing a dead-end road going on to one of the lots that was recently approved for Old Cart Path, which is the small cul-de-sac off of Stop River Road. And we had asked about, is that intended as a second means of access or egress? The attorney did at the hearing say that they would promise not to do it, but it is shown as that. So that was just something we had commented on. The primary issue, though, would be that there are bedrock wells very, very deep. Some of them, I think, well in excess of 200 feet. One, I think, 300 feet, all along Seekonk Street. And that's an issue with, obviously, the septic and what's proposed.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, let's move on. Rich, the next item is
Zoning?
zoning bylaw amendment, yep.
The two things zoning-wise for discussion tonight, we had, you wanna just pull up the- yeah. So as you know, there was discussion earlier. There was,
Make sure it's on.
I do have a green light.
Okay.
So, around, a little bit later, but there was discussion to bring the Zone 2 for the Holbrook Street well to town meeting. We were working towards that at May this past year. In the process of going through the permitting with the DEP for the well, there was some pump testings that were going on, and there was some adjustments to it. So what you have here is the, which I'll show you on the, here is the Holbrook Street well here, which overlaps with the Gold Street well, so there's two overlapping areas.
You gotta explain to the public what Zone 2 means.
Okay, the Zone 2 is the area of contribution to recharge the well itself. So the water falls on the ground, percolates down through the ground, and then the wellhead will draw out of that area for the water supply. And the Zone 2 is based on a pump testing that occurs over 180 days. I don't know the specifics, but basically they want to map out how far that zone is that contributes to the well. As far as, and then we will have, this gets adopted, zoning protection in place, requirements above the underlying zoning in that area. Because there's the Gold Street well there, there is not, there's a good amount of overlap between the two of them. So it's not necessarily a larger area that's going to be in the zone 2 that before, but quite honestly, we don't really have much choice. If we want to bring on the Holbrook Street well as the condition of the permit through DEP, we have to adopt this zone 2.
What requirements does this place on property owners who happen to fall within that zone?
The one that's, because this is really a residential zone that we're talking about for the most part here, is a little bit of is that Holbrook gets up in, yeah, no, it's all in the, is related to septic system. So it's really more of a layman's term function of the area, so 10,000 square feet per bedroom. So that's really kind of how it would affect somebody. So for example, if you already have a home there today within the zone 2, 3-bedroom, and you can continue to have a 3-bedroom. Now, if you wanted to add a bedroom, and you don't have the area to it, then that's where you would run into an issue, trying to expand additional bedrooms.
To expand your septic field to accommodate that, is what you're saying.
Right. So if you have a 3-bedroom, you can continue to operate a 3-bedroom,
Yep.
a 4-bedroom, et cetera.
All right, now, let's say you got a 3-bedroom and you continue to operate it, and 5 years from now, if the system fails, you gotta replace the system. You're stuck?
No, you just replace the system based on a 3-bedroom.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
It's really only in the situation where you're trying to add a bedroom and you might not have the area to be able to meet the
All right.
requirements.
Yep.
That's,
I might confuse this. Does Title V enable a 3-bedroom house to be a 4-bedroom house? And people have to comply with Title V when they go to sell?
so title, say that again?
I thought the state requirement to get Title V certification at the time you sell a piece of property, so maybe it was built 20, 30 years ago before it existed, so you get it approved. But that enables you to expand beyond 3 bedrooms, I thought. And it had nothing to do with the square footage.
No, just the Title V requires 10,000 square feet for
It does
each
require-
bedroom. Yeah.
Okay.
So if people have 20,000 square foot lots, if they have 3 bedrooms, in theory, if they were building today, they'd need 30,000 square feet. They couldn't build. But if they already have 3 bedrooms, they're grandfathered. But if that 3-bedroom house down the road wants to add a 4th bedroom, then they can't.
That's only in the nitrogen-sensitive area.
Right. In that zone that they're creating, yeah.
And it's the same equation then.
But if you're not in that zone, you can have any size lot you want and put whatever system will fit, yeah.
So I think if we're heading towards town meeting, we need to have this explanation available on town floor so that people can understand what they're voting for, right?
Yes.
Which was this, maybe a couple of town meetings ago did this come up? It was that the zoning map was being updated with the.
Yeah, so the earlier change was to actually have the zone 2 on the zoning map, because the previous version of our zoning bylaw referred out to the Mass GIS Zone 2 for the Aquifer Protection District. So that was housekeeping essentially from the previous permitting. The thing that came up it didn't actually, because it didn't go forward, but the lead up to town meeting was the issue of adopting Zone 2s from adjacent communities. And in some cases, some communities might have reciprocal agreements, but we don't have reciprocal agreements. The DEP doesn't require you to do that, but that was really one of the questions that had come up, that because there are Zone 2s for adjacent towns that come into the town of Norfolk and vice versa.
So like this one
Medway.
Right, exactly. Now, they still have to comply with DEP, Zone 2 requirements, even though we're not necessarily protecting it in the town of Norfolk. So you still got to meet that standard. It's just that how we regulate our Zone 2, they're not subject to that from a land use standpoint unless we had that reciprocal. And we don't. We don't have that with adjacent towns. I know there was a desire, maybe a will to try to move in that direction. But that's something the town could consider, I suppose. But without having those reciprocal agreements in place, I think it'd be a little risky to not go forward with this, because this is the last piece of the puzzle.
And there's no overlap into another town of our district that we're proposing, right?
No, it goes over to, Mills over here, is it?
Oh, it's not the, all right, thought we were talking about the other one there.
The Gold Street one or the Holbrook?
Beats the heck out of me. They're not labeled, so all I
right.
can tell you is,
What I will do, so as we go forward, this is just for discussion to move this to the warrant.
Yep.
So we'll have obviously a public hearing down the road. I'll have DPW come in to go through this for everybody, but your question is?
which zone are we talking about? Point to the one we're talking about.
This one here. Coming around.
And goes over,
And it overlaps with another.
it overlaps into Medway?
It overlaps with Gold Street
Yeah,
and then overlaps into Medway.
yeah, okay, fair enough. All right. Yep.
Is there an action before us, Rich, or this is just for?
The action would be to hopefully sponsor the moving on to town meeting, to the selectmen to vote for consideration for adoption.
I think it's appropriate that we do so.
So, Rich, why do you have, there's 3 areas on there with the same color and hatching, but you're only talking about the one?
Yeah, I'm only talking about
So
one.
what are the other 2?
So this is the,
Two existing.
Zoom it out.
yeah, I don't have it on, Betsy, do you think can we see the whole map? You know what, actually, if you go to on the town website now, that one maybe, because that one has all the.
You want the current zone map, Rich?
Yeah, because that has the existing ones.
Okay.
That's why there's 3, right? 2 are existing and the third
Then
one's
this
coming
is the
along.
third, yeah.
Well, then that answers my question. That was just like, I
Yeah.
was trying to understand what you were proposing.
Yeah, I know, yeah, there's 2 existing ones, we're just proposing one.
Gotcha. Okay.
But what's missing from this conversation is there's been numerous studies about where a potential location for a well could be in town. This is the favored spot. The downside to this is there's some restrictions that are gonna be put on some properties because of the location of this well. So, as long as the town is comfortable with those restrictions being put on those properties, then this is a good location for this well. If this isn't a good location for this well, then the town needs to go buy water from somewhere else, because there's not really another acceptable location for a well.
And we do buy some water now.
Right. So, if
So
the
that-
town wants to produce its own water, this is the site.
And do you, to Aaron's point, do you know the number of houses it impacts?
No.
Okay.
We will get that, though, I know that's, well, I'm not gonna give you a number, I have a number, but I don't wanna be quoted on that number.
less than 10, right?
Yeah,
Less than
not-
10?
Not for tonight's purposes, but I'll have,
Okay.
this is merely just to get
Yeah.
the ball rolling. I will have, made the decision to just start the conversation, and I'll have DPW come in and
Okay.
really kind of carry this forward, because it's really more of a DPW per se
Yeah.
issue to get the background on it.
All right, do we need a motion tonight to do something, or should we wait till after the DPW presentation?
I'd like to get it going tonight.
All right, then, what I heard you say is, need a motion to the effect that we recommend that the town adopt Zone 2 for the Holbrook Street well, correct? Okay, so that's the motion that we need. Does someone wish to make that motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So next, before I start talking about the site plan, what we did discuss, I emailed the board about having a special meeting to consider the zoning articles for the B1 zone. So I think the date looks like September 23rd. It's a Monday evening.
And that's not the public hearing.
No. It's just to review the language and to make the recommendation to send on to town meeting. Then we'll have a public hearing in October. I think the timing of it, just for the board to be aware, we'll probably have to have a special meeting for the public hearing.
It's a lot of extra meetings.
I don't know.
It is, yeah. Okay, but we're
There'll be
gonna,
a bonus in there.
yeah, right. After 9:30, we get time and a half.
So I just want to say September 23rd, before we get into this next bylaw, so there'll be
Okay,
another bite at the apple.
What time? Or time to be determined?
Seven o'clock.
unless- Yeah,
7 o'clock,
7.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 PM.
Yeah,
All right, in this room.
right. 23rd. Okay,
All right.
now, go ahead.
Now, what I have proposed before you is, there has been more recent significant amount of discussion relative to F11, which is our site plan approval bylaw. There has been concerns relative to what's subject to site plan review, the criteria and the interpretation and so forth. So what I attempted to do, instead of doing essentially take what we have, delete it, insert it with a new F11. It's a little bit organized differently, hopefully a little more concise, but same elements are being touched upon. A purpose, applicability, authority of the board.
But we don't know what you changed from the original one, right?
No, you have to, yeah.
You need that for town meeting?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so what will happen on town, as far as the article goes, it'll be remove,
Remove
replace.
this, yeah.
Yeah, it's a move and replace.
And there's another party involved in this discussion, right? That's Bob.
Right, so Bob will report back to the board.
Yeah.
He's been reviewing it.
Yeah.
I have reviewed this with him in concept. So essentially, there's a big shift. So the shift would be the interpretation and the determination would be the planning board's responsibility in this bylaw. So right now, the way the bylaw is, somebody would apply to Bob for determination under F11A, and there's 3 different sections of it, which is conditions of non-applicability, site plan exemption, and then conditions of a limited site plan approval. Embedded within those things, there's some confusing language, for sure. There's some confusing terminology. And there is pieces in there that are subjective as whether or not something, is to what degree the change. So so this this would be a significant shift. I'm not saying it's not, because it's a lot more black and white, so in the sense that.
Can we get a copy of what it was and what it's changing to, so that we can see it?
You're gonna have to compare them side by side, so this is not a cut and paste. So I can give you maybe like a summary of it, maybe, that might help.
Well, the old one's right in here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the bylaw. So, to explain to you, for example, the new one has site plan approval not required, which is pretty straightforward, I think.
But I think it's a mistake to leave the interpretation of what is and isn't left out to each individual member of the board. way to get a document that outlines the changes? I mean, even if you just took this document and bolded the new text, or struck out the old text.
Well, everything on this piece of paper is new, right?
Everything is new.
Everything in here is new.
The site plan bylaw I'm proposing to you
Right.
is all new.
So it's basically take these pages out and put these pages in.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
That's just,
Yep.
yeah. And the pages,
So remove and replace.
so,
I mean,
So then we need a summary of what changed.
right, so
Right,
go,
sure.
give us the paragraphs in the book that would come out,
Sure.
Can't be a
and those are?
So what would come out is conditions of non-applicability.
Page,
Yeah.
please, page, please.
Sure.
Pa-
Page 70.
Page
Yep,
7,
page 70.
okay, there we go, now we
okay,
got
page 70 would go as through.
70, 71, 72,
Oh,
I mean, you're
73,
talking all the way through
74. Yeah.
half of 74.
Yeah.
70 to 74.
Okay.
completely,
It's complete.
completely, okay.
And the main gist of this is taking the decision away from the inspector and giving it to the board.
Yeah. And
So
streamline.
just for the
There's a-
record, I think we should leave it with the inspector.
And that's a decision we can definitely talk about. But quite honestly, there's a lot of text in here that I propose to cut it down, and you need to kind of, we gotta go through it. If you think this is a huge deviation, that it removes it, but I would submit to you that it doesn't. It's very simple.
Just a couple of small points.
Sure.
On the proposed language, the second paragraph, F11B, says the criteria for the last sentence, the criteria for determination are enumerated in section F11B 1, 2, and 3. Where are those?
Don't have them, just have B.
It should be,
Those don't exist anymore.
actually, you know what? Let's see. Yeah, let's see.
Oh.
F11C, 1, 2, and 3?
Let's see.
Now it's clear. Okay. Then on page 3, is a typo, I believe. Second paragraph, next to last line, the planning board has 90 to issue a decision, 90 days.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, Walter, what was that again?
Page 3.
Page 3,
3.
paragraph 2, last
Gotcha.
sentence.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are just a couple of
And
nitpicky.
the same down below, last paragraph, last sentence is the same change, right? Says 90 again. Same page.
Yes, last, down there, right. Okay, so that, just my nitpicking stuff there.
So,
Okay.
Rich, what is the mechanism gonna be for everybody that files an F11?
So
How
essentially,
many,
they're
how many do not have to come to the planning board? For example, rental office is replaced by another rental office. I understand that technically they have to file an F11, is that correct? But now, is that gonna be the case moving forward?
So what, they're gonna have to file an F11
No,
if it changes from retail to retail? So
Yeah.
this is the criteria, the way it's, if you work it. Not site plan, site plan not required. Is it a matter of right, the use, okay? Is the alteration enlargement to the site and the building result in addition of 2 or fewer parking spaces? If that's what happens, if that's the situation, then they wouldn't have to come for a site plan review. It wouldn't be required.
It's a change in use.
What's that?
You go first, please.
What if it's a change in use?
It's a change in use?
Yeah, for example,
One retail that sells widgets and another one that would have something totally different.
but still retail.
Still retail?
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, if it's a,
Wouldn't,
if the use is allowed as a matter of right, it doesn't matter if the use
wouldn't-
changes.
you wouldn't have to,
So like
Yeah.
one, so like one's a dance studio and then next it changes to a convenience store, if they're both allowed.
that
Because
would be a change of use.
But if they're both uses are allowed as a matter of right, it doesn't matter.
So if
we
it's
have-
like use,
So, right, and those are
That's the key.
dissimilar, because
Yeah.
one is
right,
selling goods and the other selling services,
yep.
But they're both allowed.
but they're both allowed, but because it is a change of use,
Change of use, they would have to come to the planning board.
okay,
Yeah.
Nothing in here says that.
a
Applicability section.
proposed use
So under,
is permitted.
At the top, don't forget the purpose. Site plan approval by the planning board shall be required before a building or occupancy permit can be issued. For any change of use or change to an existing occupied building, the planning board shall make the determination whether site plan approval is required. So change of use, yeah.
Okay.
And then you would determine to what level the site plan would be applicable.
So retail to another retail, office rental to office rental doesn't require anything. Correct?
Correct. Retail to retail, yep.
But change of use, retail to a dentist's office requires that they come.
Comes, and then, depending upon what the property is like, the situation, the parking, circulation, et cetera, it may be not required. If it's small enough, you can make a determination, or it could be limited, or it could be a full site plan review. It would be scaled based on what's being proposed.
And what happened to that old section that said if there was a previous site plan approved?
So that would be
Go.
covered under a site plan modification. So I added a section, which is called F11H, which is modification of site plan approval. A modification to previously approved site plan shall be submitted to the planning board with a written description, of the proposed modification, along with necessary plans that show the modification in detail. Modified site plans in most instances be subject to the same procedure to review F11E. However, the request can be made as part of the application for modification that the modification is insignificant, does not warrant notice, and/or require peer review. It may act on an insignificant modification at such time as a determination is made.
Rich, is this, the draft of this, is this based on some precedent? Or is it a collection of other
So there's the
site review
Yeah,
statutes?
there's some model site plan bylaws that you can find on the various RPAs, other towns have adopted, and then there's some, I mean, I've used this as well. There's some blending of those. So to start off the base, just for, site plan review is not regulated under state law. So site plan review has been utilized and adopted through your powers to zone, okay? So you can adopt site plan review bylaws, which the town has, and we're considering modification. But there is no governing statute how you craft these, so there's blended ones. So some mimic, and ours does to a large degree, treat site plan like it was a special permit, because it requires 4 votes for approval. This one, I'm proposing just to make it a simple majority. So there's some, that's why we need to, I think it's kind of late, so we're probably not, need the time to think it through a little bit.
So where is the issues that's been coming up, and who is responsible for
So the-
filling out the F11? Where is the talk about the owner versus the applicant?
So that would, we could put it in the bylaw, but that's something that would be part of the application process.
So
that
that's
we-
gonna be on the form
Right,
page.
that would be on the form.
Okay.
So essentially, take what the form we have today, but we would, based on what we've learned more recently, is, you know, owner representative, authorized agent, we need to have that on the form, so it's clear. That's who's filing. So that would be to the planning board. So you would be the ones that somebody would have to go to for interpretation of, you know, what applicability, how this would be reviewed.
All right, now, since this affects Mr. Bullock, what is his view of this? Not that you're speaking for him, but you
No,
have-
not that I'm speaking for him. I think.
But you have had discussions with.
At this point in time where we are, I think he'd be happy to get rid of this.
Get rid of the old?
Yeah.
Get rid of the
And have that
responsibility and
determination,
Be made here.
be made by the board.
Yeah.
And whether there are all different opinions about the whole site plan review. You know, there's examples of everything that's going on. And I think, the downside is somebody will have to come before the planning board, you know, so from a business standpoint, it won't be able to go into the building department and get a determination, and maybe not need to come to the board or not.
Can you take care of the ones that don't need approval on your own?
I'm not gonna take care of the ones on my own.
All right, so the ones that don't require site plan approval, they have to come to the planning board
Correct.
anyway.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a shift.
We're gonna have an
It's-
extra
it's like-
meeting every month.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's,
We're gonna
that's
meet
why
every month.
the initial determination, in my opinion, needs to be made by the building inspector. He can refer a questionable event to the planning board for a decision, but the basic yes or no should lie outside of this board. We shouldn't require every applicant that wants to do something in this town to come to this board.
So what I will do between now, so we have the 23rd meeting coming up. Is I think if there's, at least that's
That's my opinion.
your sentiment, there might be some others. To go back to Bob
Right, you know,
and say, hey,
See,
is there a way to
the fact
work
is,
between?
if you've got an office building with 10 offices that you rent, you change those rents, you've got maybe tenants at will, so every time you change one of those office spaces, in theory, they're coming before the planning board. That's why I asked Rich, is there a waiver for some of these things? And if there is, which there is, they still have to come here.
Every
Which
time something
means-
changes.
Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly, that's what I'm saying, I think that's a little onerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do
There
too.
was some element of checks and balances, planning department, building commissioner, right, looking at larger projects.
The good
You
thing
mean with
about,
presently, you mean, or
Yeah, well, I think the intent here was to have
some balance? right?
more
Both.
transparency
Yeah.
and kind of a checks and balances system
Yeah.
around those, because some may have been determined as not needing a site plan review that maybe this board would have
is the
thought
same
does need
application
a site.
filled out by these folks that talk about, is there gonna be more traffic? All those questions, is that still the same application?
See the way I've crafted it now, they're gonna have to the board, planning board, so they're not gonna,
So they're gonna have that same application where they,
yeah,
where,
but you're gonna be making so they're gonna you're gonna interpret the intensity of the change and how it needs to be permitted.
well, that was the problem from day one. Like in Hill Street, where it was exactly the same project. It was written up, all of these questions are yes or no on this application, and most folks will just take it and check whatever they have to without really getting into detail, because some of these
There's no
questions
check and balance on
really require interpretation. So things that will need a site plan, if the questionnaire is just check no, 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 you're all set. But we have to see all of that still.
Yeah, because they're gonna.
Well, Aaron mentions that it's onerous on this board, as John says, it would cause us to have another meeting every month. It also places a time burden on, a delay time burden on an applicant, right?
Sure.
Because some guy comes in on Monday, talks to Bob, gets his answer, walks away. He wants to come to us instead, he has to wait 3 weeks until we have another meeting, right?
That's
And-
why,
Whatever.
that's why if we
And
had,
cost as well, he might have to, this is sounding like he has to prepare drawings and
if we had someone
come in with
like a
plans.
very talented planner. Look at that step.
We have a building inspector that can make that decision. It's his responsibility now to make that decision.
Not if we change this stuff.
Right. I think
Well, there
that's
has to be there should be a happy medium. The reason this
Right,
is
but the-
coming is because there's not a transparency of, some things do need a site plan review, and those aren't getting through to the planning board.
I agree, but I think that's an education to the building inspector, where you just say, look, if it's clearly obvious after your review of the site, then make your decision. If you have any indecision in what you're trying to interpret, kick it to the planning board.
And the difficulty
I
of
don't
the
think
whole
it's a matter
premise
of
is that.
indecision, I think.
Well, the difficulty of the whole premise is 6 Hill Street was such a project.
Yes.
That got it approved F11. Don't
And-
have to file. And that's when all of the commotion started coming up.
But
That
that
there
was-
is in fact storage everywhere and outside vehicles and assaults. So that's what, this is what's, this whole
We
thing.
missed one. I mean,
This whole
the
thing
building inspector
started-
missed one, so we'll
This whole thing
move on to the
started
next time.
from that. That's
Yeah,
how
it
it
did.
started.
That's right. I thought the problem with that was that the applicant can check off all the boxes and say, no, nothing's changing.
And he wasn't
give
fully
all the correct
disclosed,
answers and
right.
submit that, and that's what the judgment is based on. So, it's not a change of use.
Right.
There's
Well,
nothing
there's
else.
no-
It's
there's
entirely in the
nothing on-
hands of the
There's nothing on the
applicant to say
application to say
whether
you're
it's
gonna rent
existing
out 5
current use
spaces
or
in your
not.
building, which
Yeah.
means your
So-
traffic will be 5 more. There's nothing on that application, so in this case, when we finally ended up getting a site plan, we find out, well, he intended on renting out a bunch of those bays.
Yeah.
So the question on the box saying is the traffic trip's gonna be similar, saying yes, well, if he rents out 5 bays, the traffic isn't gonna be similar. It's tough.
So later, when we find out that the information provided in the application was false, we tell them they have to go through the site plan approval process.
Which is what happened here.
Yeah.
I don't see the fault in that process.
It was that one was a lucky catch, to be honest. I mean,
Unfortunately, the only
through-
one that would really, the only one that can really monitor something like that, I think, would be the neighbors that this business is going into. Because Bob would not be, half the people that start new businesses, well, not half, a portion, don't even realize they have to fill out a F11 and they just open up their business and it's never known. And that was one of the questioning they had in this last process. So, the people that do come forward, you know, they aren't necessarily gonna give, in-depth answers to these questionnaires that are just yes or no, Bob. It's tough.
All right, well, it's 10 o'clock again, so
Yeah.
let's figure out how we're moving forward.
I think the post I would read is to try to maybe fashion something that's, there is some involvement from the building commissioner, but to kind of vet through, and then he could then send it in this case. I think I will say, though, that we would, and when I talked to Bob, we'll sit down, we talked about this more, is that, you know, we would need to change the criteria, though, so it's clear, so it's not, you know,
Yeah.
like asking somebody who wants to get something done and is it more intense traffic? That's that special person in the world that's gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna make it more intense. The applicant wants to get something done, so, you know, the ability to decipher, you know, how accurate is that statement from, is the problem inherently in these criteria that are written? You know, that there's, so that's where we need to, again, there are
What is the
some,
penalty to the applicant who isn't truthful on the application and gets his approval on F11A and starts his business, and then it turns out that, just to stick with traffic, that it's 10 times what it was before? What's the penalty? Nothing, right?
well, no, not necessarily, I mean,
They cannot get a permit.
They already have
Well,
the
I mean,
permit.
the guy got, yeah, he already got the permit. He's got his business started.
I guess my first answer would say that it's probably, it's a violation of zoning, so that if they came in and said it was, you know, not that intense, I mean, granted, would have to enforcement issue and then go through the enforcement and potential appeal process.
Which is, of course, Bob again, who
Would be Bob and then the Board of Appeals, yeah.
yeah.
I think the mechanism is to find a mechanism where all of these standard changes of businesses, we can just bypass those.
Agreed.
All the things that are just regular old run-of-the-mill change in what retail,
Yeah.
we can just bypass that.
Yep.
If there is a way to do it.
Right, and then the bigger stuff is a collaboration between planning and building commissioner.
All right. So let me, take a crack at what I'm hearing.
You know, the problem you get in, if you are renting an office space to an accountant, say, and then you change that and rent it to a dentist or a doctor or a therapist, there's a whole different requirement parking-wise, so those people would, because in theory, they have more parking is required. So in those cases, even changing office to office is a filing needed to make sure it works.
All right.
Okay, one other nit, please bear with me here. These paragraphs are referred to like F.11.C, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of the points ain't there.
And the last one's missing a letter.
So,
It needs to be cleaned up.
that needs to be cleaned up, that's all,
All
just a 10-cent item, but,
Yes, sir.
okay. Next one, discuss potential street acceptance for fall town meeting. Your nickel.
Do we have to get through this entire agenda this evening?
I think we do.
You're almost done, right?
Yeah, we only got,
I think we're close.
Yeah.
you got one, no, you.
Board of Selectmen,
Gary's got one more shot here, right?
I've got a shot at what?
2 or 3 minutes to be approved, right? Are you still, still the secretary?
Yeah, I have to check.
Clerk.
Oh,
The clerk, right?
The clerk.
I thought I was clerk, but I cannot be clerk.
You are clerk.
I thought so. Anyway,
all right.
go.
Board of Selectmen voted their intentions last meeting for those roads that are listed on there to become public ways. They referred it to the board, the planning board. Will then make a recommendation at October 8th, planning board meeting. So between now and October 8th, we'll go through each one of these roads and see if they're in position to be able to recommend for town approval. The Board of Selectmen will then hold a public hearing on it at the end of, I think it's gonna be November 5th.
Based on what we know today,
Mm-hmm.
they'd all get approved, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be nice to make an issue that the meeting house street trees are only 1.5 inches.
We're gonna go measure 'em
Again, it doesn't
on the
really
way
matter,
home.
because someone's gonna tell us whether to approve them or not in the next month, right?
They're gonna make it, yeah, you're good.
So,
Now, just,
next.
Yep.
Yeah.
all right. Done.
Meeting minutes.
No, go ahead, Gary.
I don't know, what is it that you?
Well,
are
we have
asking?
3 sets of meeting minutes that need to be approved.
Oh, I've never approved meeting minutes before.
Oh,
But-
4 sets.
well, how many?
No, I have not, I know my name is on the back of them.
June
And should
4th.
be on the front of them.
June
which is
4th,
fine.
June 11th, July
Sure.
9th, and August. Wow, holy catfish, boy, you've been productive here.
So what do you look for, a motion? Are you looking
You have a motion to approve the minutes
Wow.
of meeting.
Let's make one.
to
one
approve
motion.
all the
All
minutes
four.
now and
Yep.
to come?
I may need a reorganization here.
What are they, for the last 4 months? Last 4 meetings?
Yeah,
Okay,
the dates are in the top there. You need
Okay.
to spell out the dates.
all right, good. Make a motion to accept meeting minutes from the previous planning board meetings dated June 4th, 2019, June 11th, 2019, July 9th, 2019, and August 5th of 2019.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so you gotta look, in the future, you gotta make sure you get a draft from her look it over.
I do. I send back comments all the
There you
time.
go, then they're cool.
This would be his first,
This is my, well, I've done other official acts as a clerk. Come on.
So it looks like you got a
We
mixed
gotta sign
bag here,
some stuff
Betsy. It
now,
looks
right?
like the first two, I actually was still the clerk.
On the back of them.
Yes.
Because we didn't appoint Gary until the June 11th meeting.
Right.
Okay. All right, so then I will.
Do I hear a motion?
could we have co-clerks?
Betsy will get it
I
right.
will take care of.
Gary will check it when he signs.
All right, and we need to sign some things, right?
I do. I've got
Okay.
two decisions and a lot release.
Two decisions and a lot release. Okay.
Oh, do you need a copy?
Is this also to be signed?
I've got the original right there.
You do?
In front of you, yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Boy. Ugh.
Not worth bringing that up. Oh, you already talked about it, I guess. We're good. huh?
No, we'll make a plug. No, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, we're gonna plug.
Oh, you are? Tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Is that it, sir, or do we have other items that you'd like?
Well,
to-
we're just making a plug for Thursday night's community meeting.
Oh, yes,
Freeman Kennedy School, B1 community meeting,
this guy here.
correct. We'll be on local cable, not live,
Never
but
miss it.
will be. We'll talk about potential recommendations for zoning changes and where we've gone so far.
Okay.
Josh is working on design guidelines to get that out, so.
Is it you and Josh doing the engagement with the people that show up?
Yes.
Okay. I will be there in support.
All right.
I will be there.
You all can attend and tell family, friends, and whoever else want
Bring as many people as we can.
to, yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.